Chapter 146. Everyone shuddered from the bottom of their hearts when they heard Yun Jian's menacing words floating toward them. Especially Zhang Xiaofan and Ling Yichen. They never thought that Lu Rongrong was one of the masterminds behind Chen Xinyi's kidnapping. Where is she? When everyone came back to their senses, Yun Jian's voice had returned to normal. She asked Yuan Xiaoyu calmly, but there was a chilling coldness in her voice. She was, of course, referring to Chen Xinyi. Yuan Xiaoyu did not dare to hide anything. She knew that this matter was serious. Because Yun Jian was the one who made her brother, whom she had always admired, feel uneasy. Yuan Xiaoyu immediately gave him an address. She raised her head and looked at Yuan Xuxiao while trembling. She pursed her lips and said, "Originally, they wanted to kidnap the little girl first and then send someone to deliver a letter to you. They wanted you to go to the place they told you to go alone and then capture you directly." Before Yuan Xiaoyu could finish, Yun Jian turned and left. She did not want to hear this nonsense. When she left, she gestured to Zhang Xiaofan and Ling Yichen. They immediately followed her. "You stay here and don't go anywhere. I'll deal with you when I come back." Yuan Xuxiao pointed at Yuan Xiaoyu's head and walked out. He was a smart man. He knew that his sister had made such a serious mistake. If he did not make up for it, Yun Jian, who was one of the higher-ups of the kosher mercenaries, would not let her go. Therefore, he wanted to do something while he could still make up for it. After all, anyone who offended the kosher mercenaries was one step closer to death. The four of them walked out of the back door and came to the center of the casino. Just now, the gamblers in the casino were shouting even louder. It could be said that there was another wave after another. The four of them, led by Yun Jian, had just walked to the center of the casino. They wanted to leave quietly, but unexpectedly, they heard a heart-wrenching voice begging for mercy. "Please, please don't cut my hand, don't cut it. I'll go home to get the money." It was a hoarse male voice, and there was a sense of despair and regret in it. There were plenty of people who lost money in the casino and could not pay it back, resulting in their limbs being chopped off. This was especially true in the Prime Casino, known as the top casino in Longmen City. It was as simple as eating a meal. Yun Jian walked past the place directly, but it was Zhang Xiaofan and Ling Yichen who looked horrified. "No, don't cut it off, I beg you, please." "Yun Jian? Yun Jian? Daughter? My daughter, she's my daughter." It was then that the pleading voice went straight to Yun Jian as if it had suddenly seen some hope. When Yun Jian first heard the voice, she found it familiar but she did not pay it much attention. When the voice called her in front of everyone, however, Yun Jian snapped back to reality. She looked up and saw a sloppy middle-aged man in his 30s or 40s with a beard on his chin that had not been shaved for a long time running toward her. Yun Jian was stunned, but she managed to get a clear look at the man's face. Although he was more unkempt compared to the father in the original owner's memory, it was not hard to tell that this was the person she had never seen since her rebirth and had left her family with so much trouble. The father of her current body, Yun Gang. When Yun Gang saw Yun Jian, he could not care less about why his daughter was here. He ran behind Yun Jian and stuck his head out to look at the person who had just won against him but wanted to chop off his hand because he could not pay back the money he had lost. He shuddered slightly. Zhang Xiaofan, Ling Yichen, and Yuan Xuxiao were surprised that the middle-aged man would simply recognize his father. However, when they saw that Yun Jian did not push the man away but remained silent and aloof, they were shocked. This sloppy and cowardly man who looked like a slug was really Yun Jian's father? How was this possible? Yun Jian's domineering aura even made Yuan Xuxiao wonder who could have given birth to such an amazing daughter. Chapter 147. Jian. Xiao Jian, save me. Save daddy, save daddy. Yun Gang hid behind Yun Jian and tugged at the corner of Yun Jian's shirt as he watched the man who was approaching him. This man was the one who had just won the bet and wanted to chop off Yun Gang's hands because he could not pay up. This man was one of Yuan Suzhao's subordinates. His name was Yi Feng and he was the manager of the casino. Yun Gang had come here with the intention of gambling today. If he won, he would have the money to pay off his debt. Who knew that he would lose so badly and almost lose both his hands? At that moment, Yun Gang had no idea what had happened to his family. Ever since he ran away with a debt, he had not returned to Xinjiang town. When Yi Feng saw Yun Gang running behind Yun Jian, he was making his way over with the intention of putting an end to this matter. In spite of it, Yi Feng saw his boss, Yuan Shuxiao, standing behind Yun Jian and waving at him, signaling him to let it go. Hence, he did not come over again. Let go. Yun Jian's frivolous voice rang again, causing everyone's hearts to skip a beat. Yun Jian was speaking to Yun Gang. It was because Yun Gang was tugging at the hem of Yun Jian's shirt out of fear. Xiao Jian, daddy's wrong, daddy's wrong, daddy's wrong, please save daddy. Yun Gang thought that Yun Jian was angry and did not realize that Yi Feng had backed off. Instead, he tugged at Yun Jian's shirt even more fearfully as he begged for help in a trembling voice. I'll say it again, let go or I'll cripple your hands for you. Yun Jian did not like Yun Gang at all. She did not expect to run into Yun Gang in a place like this. Previously, Yun Gang had left so many troublesome chores for the family. She could ignore it, but she didn't expect that this person named Father would be so stubborn as to continue gambling in the casino. If she had not persuaded Qin Yiru to leave Yun Gang, what would have happened? It was estimated that Qin Yiru would be cheated by Yun Gang until not even a bone would be left. Yun Gang had never thought that his weak and timid daughter would speak to him in such a tone. He was frightened on the spot, and his hand unconsciously loosened. Everyone sucked in a deep breath when they saw this. Let's go. Yun Jian said a few words to the people behind her, but her eyes glanced sideways at Yun Gang and threatened. If you dare to follow me, not only will I cripple your hands, I will also chop off your feet. Also, you're not allowed to disturb my mother and brother in the future. Go back to your hometown. I've already paid off your debt. This is the last time. From now on, we have nothing to do with each other. Yun Jian's words were a disguised reminder to Yuan Shuxiao's men to let Yun Gang go. Of course, she also expressed her attitude. This was the last time she would clean up the mess for the original owner's father. In the future, this man's life and death would have nothing to do with her. Yun Gang was dumbfounded. He rolled his eyes and stared blankly at Yun Jian being escorted out by Yuan Shuxiao and the others. He had an illusion that his daughter was not a fish in a pond. After leaving the casino, Yuan Shuxiao took out his jeep for Yun Jian. They got in the jeep. Yun Jian did not want to be in the limelight and let Yuan Shuxiao drive her to the place that Yuan Xiaoyu told her to. It was a remote area in the wilderness. There was only a row of temporary factory buildings built here. In the warehouse behind the factory building, Shiniji, whose hands were crippled, stood there fiercely with a seductive woman beside him. Have you caught Yun Jian yet? Shiniji exhaled fiercely. Not yet, but soon. The seductive woman sighed. Chapter 148. Okay, brother. The seductive woman standing beside Shiniji nodded and smiled viciously. This seductive foreign woman was Shiniji's sister, Shiniji. Shiniji looked down and a sharp glint flashed across her eyes. She said to Shiniji in a low voice, the assassin we hired this time is one of the top 10 assassins on the assassin ranking, Wolf Blade, who is also known as the Grim Killer. Unless Yun Jian is on the assassin or secret agent ranking, she can't possibly leave this place alive. Dream on. Shiniji laughed out loud when he heard that. It was as if he could see Yun Jian descending into hell and taking his revenge. A jeep drove in through the rows of factories. Finally, the jeep stopped at the entrance of the factories. Yun Jian and the rest got out of the car one by one. This is the place Xiaoyu mentioned. Yuan Shuxiao was the last to get out of the car. He closed the car door and took a few steps forward. He looked around and said, there are so many factories here. How are we going to find her? Zhang Xiaofan seemed to be in a hurry. Ever since Chen Sini was taken away, every minute and every second had been very difficult for him. Although Zhang Xiaofan liked to bicker with Chen Sini on a daily basis, Chen Sini was his only sister among the younger generation. Although they were cousins, they had grown up together and were very close to each other. As her brother, he naturally did not want anything to happen to his sister. All right, Xiaofan, I've already informed the police. I believe they will come here soon to rescue her. I didn't inform uncle and auntie because I'm afraid they will be worried if they know that something happened to Sini. Ling Yichen waved his phone and sent a text message. Thank you. Zhang Xiaofan saw that Ling Yichen was considerate and thanked him. Let's go. Yun Jian took 2 steps forward and suddenly stopped. She turned her head to look at Zhang Xiaofan and Ling Yichen. Are you two going to continue? Shiniji has a grudge against me, and he's a foreigner from country Y. You've met Zhang Xiaofeng before, and he's someone who can get a pistol. If you guys continue to follow me and something happens, what will you do? Zhang Xiaofeng was her personal disciple, her first disciple. If he followed her, he would definitely experience such dangerous things. However, Zhang Xiaofeng still did not have the ability to protect himself because he had just received training. Yun Jian never liked people making unnecessary sacrifices. Moreover, this was her own business. No, master. I will definitely go because Cinny is my younger sister. She is in danger now, and as her brother, how can I run away at such a dangerous time? Zhang Xiaofeng firmly expressed his inner thoughts. Me too, let's go together. Ling Yichen did not look like a playboy at the moment. Instead, he looked more like a proper man. Yun Jian smiled with her eyes crinkled. Her disciple should have such spirit. Let's go then. Yun Jian strode forward. Yuan Xuxiao and the rest were stunned. There are so many factories here. Do you know where the person is? Aren't you afraid of alerting the enemy? Yuan Xuxiao was indeed the boss of Longmen City's second mafia group. He had the ability to judge and asked Yun Jian. Yes. Yun Jian narrowed her eyes and suddenly pointed at the ground. The factory floor in this era was not made of cement but made of sand and rocks. On the sand and rocks, there was a particularly obvious tire print. They were still pondering Yun Jian's meaning with a frown when Yun Jian explained, "Just follow the tire print left by the car." Yuan Xuxiao was dumbfounded. She had observed it so carefully. Yuan Xuxiao asked again in confusion, "How did you determine that this tire print was driven by the car that took your friend away? What if it was another car?" Zhang Xiaofeng and Ling Yichen were equally puzzled by this question. Yun Jian narrowed her eyes and turned to look at them, pointing a finger as she explained, "First, this tire print was crushed not too long ago. Second, the tire print of your Jeep, Dragon A. 50855, looks like this." She could actually tell that the tire print was left by a car not too long ago? Her knowledge and insight were actually so precise. Chapter 149. After that, Zhang Xiaofeng and the other two did not question her anymore. To be honest, whether it was Yun Jian's previous judgment or her skills and methods, they did not seem like something a teenage girl should have. The only thing they were certain of was that her assertions were never wrong. Based on this alone, the three of them trusted her unconditionally. "Trust me and follow me," Yun Jian said with a slight quirk of her brow while the three of them thought about it. All three of them nodded in unison. With Yun Jian leading the way, they followed the deepest tire tracks on the sand until they came to the door of a factory in the corner. In the warehouse behind the factory, Shiniji, and the cold-faced assassin they hired, Wolf Blade, were already standing there. Not far away, Chen Cinny, who had her mouth covered with black tape, was tied to a bench, trying to make a sound. There was a group of people standing beside Shiniji, who were probably their subordinates. "Why isn't that brat here yet? Didn't you say you've sent someone to inform her?" Shiniji shot his younger sister Shiniji, a vicious glare from the corner of his eyes. He had no idea that Yun Jian had already come before she received the notice. "Brother, is she going to leave her alone? After all, is it worth it to die for a friend?" Shiniji pointed at Chen Cinny, who was tied up, with a frown. Chen Cinny widened her eyes before she shook her head abruptly. She had been listening to the duo's conversation and had seen Shiniji in the ring the last time. She already knew that they had captured her to lure Yun Jian. She knew that Jian would come, but she was afraid that something would happen to the friend she had spent so much effort to make. "Boss, since that brat isn't here, why don't you let us have some fun first?" A few foreigners who stood beside Shiniji rubbed their hands together as they looked at Chen Cinny's pretty face. A few of them even pulled up their pants. It was needless to say how wretched they were. "Go, go, go. As long as you don't make any noise, it's fine." Shiniji wanted to take revenge on Yun Jian, so he hated Yun Jian. Naturally, he wasn't satisfied with Yun Jian's friend, Chen Cinny. When the men heard Shiniji's words, they rubbed their hands and walked toward Chen Cinny with lewd smiles. Chen Cinny's beautiful eyes suddenly widened, because these foreigners were all speaking Chinese, and she could understand them all the way. At this moment, she shook her head vigorously. This was the first time she had felt such despair and fear. She even wanted to end her life at this moment. However, before these men could get close to Chen Cinny, the door was kicked open with a bang. The sturdy door was kicked open, and Yun Jian's slender and beautiful body was the first to step in. Her long and narrow eyes scanned the entire place sharply, and she said without restraint, "You dare to touch my people, Shiniji, you're dead meat." She had let Shiniji go in the arena last time out of respect for Su Zetian. However, Shiniji was still being stubborn today, so he couldn't blame her for being merciless. Kakik. Shiniji was slightly taken aback when he saw Yun Jian slam the door open, and a strange smile appeared on his face. He wasn't afraid of Yun Jian at all. "Mr. Wolfblade, please kill her." Shiniji turned his head to look at Wolfblade and spoke in an extremely respectful tone. Only then did everyone turn their gazes toward this man, who was as thin as a skeleton. Yun Jian narrowed her eyes and looked directly at this man. Wolfblade, ranked 10th on the assassin rankings, was a cold-faced assassin. This person had a wild, wolf-like nature. Although he was extremely thin and weak, he was an expert in assassination. In a one-on-one battle, even the assassin ranked higher than him might not be able to defeat him. "Shiniji, the person you want me to kill is only this little girl? You're underestimating me too much. I, Wolfblade, am one of the top 10 elites in the world of assassins, and you want me to fight a little girl?" Wolfblade looked at Yun Jian with disdain as he spoke to Shiniji. Assassin? Shiniji had actually hired an assassin to deal with Yun Jian? Hearing Wolfblade's words, Zhang Xiaofan, Ling Chen, and Yuan Shuxiao's faces turned pale. Chapter 150. The reason why Zhang Xiaofan and the others turned pale wasn't just because Wolfblade was an assassin. If Wolfblade was just a normal assassin without formal training, then they wouldn't be so afraid. After all, Yun Jian's strength wasn't just for show. She was able to defeat Shiniji in one move and even take away his gun and cripple his hands. It was obvious that Yun Jian wasn't a normal person. However, Wolfblade claimed to be in the top 10 of the assassin ranking. To be able to squeeze into the top 10 of the assassin ranking or secret agent ranking, which one of them wasn't an elite that had survived a rain of bullets? It could be said that no matter who it was, as long as they showed up, even if they just stomped their feet, it was enough to cause a storm. Shiniji had actually hired Wolfblade, who was ranked 10th on the assassin ranking. Moreover, his goal was only to take revenge on Yun Jian. Zhang Xiaofan and the others looked worriedly at Yun Jian. They immediately frowned with worry and fear. However, when Yun Jian heard Wolfblade's claim, her face didn't show any signs of shock. On the contrary, she was very calm. Then, she raised her eyebrows and pointed a slender finger at Wolfblade. She said frivolously, "You're not worthy of fighting with me. Killing you will only dirty my hands." Yun Jian's words sounded like she didn't care about her life. A little girl like her actually dared to provoke the internationally famous cold-faced assassin, Wolfblade. "Tiska, you little girl, you're really interesting. You're so young but you've got guts. However, it's a pity that you're someone that my employer wants to kill. Therefore, you must die today." Wolfblade sized up Yun Jian again. He clicked his tongue and spoke with a sinister tone. The way he looked at Yun Jian was like he was looking at a dead person. If Wolfblade had looked down on Yun Jian before, then now he had to reevaluate this girl. Wolfblade could smell the scent of an assassin from Yun Jian's aura, but he didn't pay it any mind. After all, it wasn't easy to find an assassin or secret agent who was better than him in the world. Moreover, this girl in front of him was only 15 or 16 years old. "You guys go away." Yun Jian waved her hand at Zhang Xiaofan and the others behind her. She was currently emitting an imposing aura that forced them to submit. At this moment, Zhang Xiaofan and the others didn't say anything and obediently retreated. In their hearts, they already placed Yun Jian's orders first. Tisk. Interesting. Interesting. Wolfblade smirked abruptly and said something chilling in an extremely ordinary tone as he walked toward Yun Jian. Before anyone could react, Wolfblade extended his arm and sprinted toward Yun Jian. His fingernails were pointed downward as he attacked Yun Jian viciously. His bony fingernails were 5 centimeters long, making him look like a devil from hell. The people present couldn't help but shiver. He would attack if he wanted to. As an assassin, he could laugh at you one second and stab you in the stomach the next. They would even do anything to complete their mission, even their lives. Therefore, their existence made countless businessmen, politicians, and international tycoons tremble in fear. Those 5 centimeter long fingernails seemed like they would stab Yun Jian's heart in the next second. Everyone's expression changed greatly. Yun Jian, the main character, didn't move. She didn't move. Instead, she began to speak. Wolf's Blade joined in Hun group at the age of 3. At 8, he stole a knife and killed someone. At 14, he started his first mission. At 18, he assassinated the chief of Sea Country and became famous. With this kind of experience, what qualifications do you have to fight me? With every word Yun Jian said, Wolf's Blade froze. This girl knew his identity so well. At the same time, everyone present looked at Yun Jian in shock. Chapter 151. Wolf Blade was stunned. How did Yun Jian find out that he was an assassin from the Hun organization? It should be known that any assassin or special agent on the assassin or special agent ranking would have all their secrets sealed off, as long as they were in the top 10. Ordinary people could forget about knowing their qualifications. Even if they wanted to know their gender, it was a very difficult thing to do. That was why Wolf Blade was so shocked. Even if Wolf Blade was one of the top 10 assassins on the leaderboard, it was impossible for him to know the qualifications of the other assassins on the leaderboard. Before this, Wolf Blade admitted that he had never met Yun Jian, let alone that Yun Jian had the time to check his qualifications. Wolf Blade's pupils suddenly shrank. His eyes widened as he stared at the beautiful girl with her hair tied up in a high ponytail. He then shook his head. He knew that there were 2 people in the world who could easily find out the top 10 assassins and secret agent secrets. There was no one else. One of them was the leader of the Hun organization. The leader of the Hun organization was the leader of the organization he belonged to. Naturally, he would not spread this information. As for the other person, she was the top secret agent on the secret agent leaderboard, known as the strongest secret agent in history. She was the king of secret agents with invincible hacking skills, Slaying God. Slaying God was an existence that struck fear into the hearts of those in the underworld. She was a legend. However, there was no way Wolf Blade would believe that the young girl before him was Slaying God. Although he did not know Slaying God's age and gender, he did not think that the master of the Tang Tang secret agent world would appear in such a destitute place. Was that not a joke? With that in mind, Wolf Blade looked at Yun Jian confidently and cackled, no longer holding back. I don't care where you got my qualifications from. Since you know my secrets, you'll have to die today. As he spoke, Wolf Blade put his fingernails together and leaped toward Yun Jian. Zhang Xiaofan and the rest held their breaths. They wanted to scream out loud. Could Yun Jian really withstand an attack from an international assassin? The answer was, of course, yes. Yun Jian smirked. She turned sideways to face Wolf Blade and narrowed her eyes. Her youthful eyes sparkled. She curled her lips and said in disdain, "Since you want to die, I will fulfill your wish." Yun Jian's voice was flat, and no one could hear any changes in it. However, just as she said the last word, Yun Jian's figure flashed, and what appeared next was a dazzling flash of lightning. Her figure was as fast as lightning, and her speed was even faster than Wolf Blade's. You! Wolf Blade's eyes widened, but his many years of experience allowed him to quickly calm down. He closed his fingers and clenched his hand into a fist. He changed his strategy and threw a punch at Yun Jian. Yun Jian narrowed her lips. She also stretched out her hand and clenched her fist, slamming it against Wolf Blade's fist. Ha! Wolf Blade roared. Pooh! At the same time, the sound of a blade piercing into flesh could be heard. What the audience saw was Yun Jian extending her arm and punching Wolf Blade at the same time. Both of their fists were tied. They saw Yun Jian squinting her eyes and smirking. When the 2 fists collided, her soft leg bent in an arc and hit Wolf Blade's chest from his back. What was different from normal shoes was that Yun Jian's seemingly ordinary white shoes had a small knife stuck in the tip. At this moment, Yun Jian hooked her leg and the knife on the tip of her shoe ruthlessly pierced Wolf Blade's heart. In a fight between assassins, especially in a fight between experts, a single move could decide the outcome. Zhang Xiaofan and the others clearly saw that Yun Jian had used one hand to block Wolf Blade's fist, while her other hand had inserted a small knife into the tip of her own white shoes. Then, when her fist collided with Wolf Blade, the tip of her shoe pierced Wolf Blade's heart at the same time. This series of impossible movements appeared out of thin air in front of everyone's eyes. The outcome would be decided in one round. You! Wolf Blade suddenly widened his eyes. He looked at the girl's smiling face up close and finally spat out a mouthful of fresh blood. Slaying! Wolf Blade tried his best to shout the word God, but he realized that his body was already falling backward. He stared at Yun Jian in horror as his body fell to the ground and died with his eyes wide open. There was only one person in the world who could do what Yun Jian did with such ease. That person was slaying God. Chapter 152. Killing one of the top 10 international assassins, Wolf Blade, with one move. If Yun Jian defeating Shinji with one move was shocking, then at this moment, everyone's mouths were wide open enough to fit a large duck egg. Yun Jian, where did she come from? Zhang Xiaofan and Ling Yichen were stunned on the spot. Every cell in their body was boiling in shock. Yuan Shuxiao's small eyes were also wide open. Shinji, on the other hand, shook his head violently, staring at Yun Jian in disbelief and disbelief. He backed away slowly, muttering, "Impossible! Impossible!" Even the top 10 assassins in the international assassin chart were no match for Yun Jian and were killed in one move. Who else could subdue her then? No, no, no. Shinji screamed. His deep male voice sounded sharp and crazy. Just you wait, Yun Jian. Shinji, just you wait. Next time I'll kill you. I'll kill you next time. Shinji glared fiercely at Yun Jian. He opened his mouth and spat out threatening words. His voice was eerie and terrifying. Do you think I'll let you live until the next time? The creepy smirk on Yun Jian's lips abruptly vanished as she slowly made her way to Shinji. Even her tone was instilling fear from the bottom of one's heart. She had let Shinji go last time because of Su Zetian. She had never been a charitable person. She was not stupid. Shinji wanted her life and even implicated the people she cared about. If this happened once, there would be a second time. How could she let go of a ticking time bomb that could explode at any time and continue living in this world? You want to kill me? No, no, no. I'm a member of Country-Wise national team. If you kill me, aren't you afraid that you'll become Country-Wise enemy? This was Shinji's trump card. When Wolf Blade was killed by Yun Jian, he did not show any fear, because he felt that Yun Jian would not dare to kill him. Do you think I'll be afraid? Yun Jian smiled contemptuously, her calm and beautiful lips curling up. Shinji panicked when he heard that. She was indeed the kind of person who was not afraid of anything. Thus, he turned around and ran. In order to escape, he did not even care about his sister. Big brother. Shinji was shocked as she watched Shinji run towards the back door of the warehouse. She couldn't react for a long time. So, Yun Jian sneered. She reached out and pulled out the knife stuck in the tip of her shoe. Then, she threw it in the direction Shinji had fled. Puh. From afar, Shinji's heart was pierced by the dagger thrown by the girl, and he fell to the ground like a puddle of mud. Shinji, dead. Shitaji was shocked. She slowly slid to the ground and slowly became paralyzed. Everything she did was for her brother. She never thought that the brother who loved her the most would abandon her and run away. And now, his brother was dead. At that moment, Shinji completely lost her will. Her eyes were lifeless. Yun Jian did not care about Shinji. She strode towards Chen Sini and quickly untied the rope that bound Chen Sini. Both of you come and help her. Yun Jian turned to look at Zhang Xiaofan and Ling Yichen. Only then did the two of them come back to their senses. They ran over to help Chen Sini. Yun Jian's killing stance was terrifying, but the two of them were not frightened. They were just a little shocked. Chapter 153. Yun Jian asked Zhang Xiaofan and Ling Yichen to help Chen Sini because she had no more energy to support Chen Sini. Although Yun Jian had killed Wolf Blade in one hit, she had used up almost all the energy in her body. In a battle between masters, it was true that one hit would determine the winner. However, Yun Jian knew that if she did not kill Wolf Blade in one hit, her current body would not be able to support her to defeat Wolf Blade. After all, Wolf Blade was one of the top 10 assassins in the assassin ranking. He was not a second-rate assassin, especially when her current body's energy was not even 1/10 of what it was in her previous life. Yun Jian could only use her killer move to win. Wolf Blade lost because his killer move was not as fast, accurate, and ruthless as Yun Jian's. Yun Jian had used up all her energy. Although she did not show it, only she knew how much energy she had. Beep, beep, beep. At this moment, the sound of an alarm came from the door. Ling Yichen had called the police earlier, so it was normal for the police to come now. However, there were 2 more bodies on the ground. It would be abnormal for them to negotiate with the police. Don't worry, leave it to me. I'm familiar with the people in the police station. Yuan Shuxiao volunteered. He looked at Yun Jian as he spoke. It was only when Yun Jian looked down and hummed in agreement that Yuan Shuxiao breathed a sigh of relief. Yuan Shuxiao was afraid that Yun Jian would not forgive his sister, Yuan Xiaoyu, for what she had done before. However, when he heard Yun Jian's reply, he immediately felt relieved. Yuan Shuxiao was in the underworld. Naturally, he had met the people in the police station and had a good relationship with them. In the end, this incident was suppressed by Yuan Shuxiao. With Yuan Shuxiao's protection, Yun Jian's murder was not exposed at all. In fact, the police were surprisingly happy when they received the bodies this time. This was because Wolf Blade was an assassin on the international assassin ranking. At the same time, he was also one of the most wanted criminals in the world. The result was that they got rid of a wanted criminal that the international police wanted to arrest. The police station could be considered to have made a great contribution. When Wolf Blade was killed in Longmen City, the leader of the special forces, Gu Junjian, learned about it. He wanted to investigate immediately. Who killed the famous and cunning Wolf Blade? Gu Junjian was the leader of the country's special forces. He held a high position and there were not many people or things that could attract his attention. In spite of it, Wolf Blade's death in Longmen City had completely caught his attention. Gu Junjian conducted a thorough search in secret and even mobilized the police force to find the culprit at all costs. Of course, she did not know that she had caused a commotion among the police. They took advantage of the time to rush back to the forest park and catch the bus back to school. She did not see Lu Rongrong on the bus back. The class was split into 2 batches and was arranged into different buses. Once they got off the bus, Yun Jian blocked the other bus that was carrying her class and dragged Lu Rongrong off the bus, teaching her a harsh lesson in front of the whole school. For people like Lu Rongrong, ordinary lessons were useless. Yun Jian dashed into the bus and dragged her down. Once she did, she slapped her countless times, smirking as she did so. You know what you're doing. If you dare to do anything again, I'll make sure you die. Don't have you died without a proper burial place. You. A slap for each word. It was only when Lu Rongrong screamed and fainted, her cheeks swollen, that Yun Jian turned to leave. Chapter 154. Lu Rongrong being beaten up by Yun Jian in public caused a commotion in the school, but as the subject of everyone's discussion, Yun Jian had long stayed in the classroom obediently. The next few days were peaceful for Yun Jian. The only difference was that Ling Yichen had followed Zhang Xiaofan and would be fighting to be Yun Jian's disciple after class. Whenever he saw Ling Yichen, who had toned down his playboy self and was admiring Yun Jian in a different way, Zhang Xiaofan would always point at Yun Jian fiercely to declare his sovereignty. This is my master. Ling Yichen, don't even think about making my master take you as his disciple. After that, Zhang Xiaofan would go up to Yun Jian with a grin and talk about this and that. Chen Xinyi had recovered from the fright that day and was back to her usual carefree self. Yun Jian received news from Zhang Xiaofan as well, saying that the renovation of the storefront had begun and a third of the space had already been renovated. It was believed that the renovation would be completed in less than 2 months. Yun Jian smiled in response. Once the renovation was completed, the company could officially start running. She was confident that she could set the new Start Auto Sales Company on the right track and become a household name within the next year. Snake. Lizard sent a message to Yun Jian, telling her that she could not rush back to Longmen City for the time being, but she had already ordered someone to send Yun Jian's beloved car, the flagship limited edition Ferrari LaFerrari, to Yun Jian. Yun Jian's smirk deepened when she heard the news. Yun Jian was not only a secret agent, she was also a collector who loved luxury cars. She loved sports cars and supercars produced all over the country. In her previous life, she had collected a lot of limited edition cars, but among all the cars, her favorite was this Ferrari LaFerrari. Snake. Lizard had always been meticulous and did not forget to send her beloved car over this time. Yun Jian was glad about it. After a few days of peace, Qin Yiru received news that her mother, Yun Jian's grandmother, was sick and wanted Qin Yiru to go home to visit her. Qin Yiru had indeed left the Yun family, but that did not mean that she could abandon her biological mother and become an unfilial daughter who did not even return home. Thus on this day, Qin Yiru took the remaining 100 renminbi from her salary, which she had just received after deducting her living expenses, and boarded the bus to return to Xinjiang town. In Yun Jian's memory, Qin Yiru's family was not good people. Furthermore, Yun Gang might have already returned to Xinjiang town. Yun Jian was afraid that Yun Gang would come to Qin Yiru's doorstep and cause trouble. She was afraid that no one would support Qin Yiru. Thus, she insisted on going back with him. Qin Yiru naturally understood her daughter's thoughts. She did not want to disappoint her daughter, so she brought Yun Jian back with her. Qin Yiru's family was also in Xinjiang town. However, Xinjiang town was quite big, so her family's house was still a little far from Yun Gang's house, which she used to live in. It was a 3-story brick house with 3 suites. In this day and age, those who could afford to build a 3-story house with 3 suites were considered to be the best in town. To be honest, Yun Jian's grandmother's family was not poor. Qin Yiru's sister, Qin Junlan, had a good family background. She would often help her uncle's family who lived with Yun Jian's maternal grandparents. Qin Yiru's mother gave birth to 5 children. One of them died young, so Qin Junlan was the first in seniority. Her eldest son was Qin Liqian, and the next in seniority was Qin Yiru. As for the last daughter, she was Yun Jian's youngest aunt, Qin Fangfang, who had married out of the province in her early years. She would only come home to visit during the new year. Qin Yiru knocked on the door and opened it. She was stunned when she saw a house full of people sitting in it. She was stunned because the person sitting in the main seat was none other than her mother, who had claimed that she was sick and wanted her to go home to visit her. Yun Jian narrowed her eyes and saw 2 people standing next to her nominal grandmother, who was sitting in the main seat with an intimidating aura. Qin Junlan and Zhang Taijun. However, Zhang Tiejuan's face was dark, and he looked gloomy. At that moment, Yun Jian was suddenly enlightened. She was wondering why her grandmother, who had never liked her mother, would suddenly call Qin Yiru home to visit her. "Mom, are you okay?" Qin Yiru was stunned, but she still pulled Yun Jian in. She asked because she was concerned about her mother's condition. Chapter 155. "Mom, you're not sick?" Qin Yiru asked in surprise when she saw her mother, Zhang Meihua, sitting on the stool and pointing at her. She was strong and did not pay attention to Zhang Meihua's question. After all, Zhang Meihua had asked Qin Yiru to come home with the excuse that she was sick in bed. "Sick? What's sick? You unfilial daughter. Do you really want me to die early from illness? You're so useless. You didn't even discuss something as important as divorcing Yun Gang at home. If it weren't for Tai Jun bumping into Yun Jian in Longmen City, you wouldn't have come home even if you were beaten to death. If I didn't pretend to be sick and ask you to come home, you wouldn't even acknowledge your mother, would you?" Zhang Meihua slammed her hand on the table and spat out a string of words. In fact, the daughter that Zhang Meihua had always hated the most was Qin Yiru. She had high hopes for her son, Qin Liqian. When she named her son, Qin Liqian, she had hoped that he would be rich, and that he could earn big bucks in the future. Even if Qin Liqian grew up to be a spineless coward, Zhang Meihua still thought highly of him. From Zhang Meihua's perspective, she was an old woman who favored boys over girls and valued the rich over the poor. Qin Yiru had not married well, but she had to support 2 children with both hands. Even food and clothing had become a problem. This made Zhang Meihua dislike her even more. In fact, Zhang Meihua had received the news that Qin Yiru was planning to leave the Yun family. However, she did not mention it, nor did she ask. What Zhang Meihua was most afraid of was that Qin Yiru would really bring the 2 children to stay at her parents' house shamelessly. Zhang Meihua even wondered why she had given birth to such a dumb daughter. If she had known that she was so useless, she would have killed her in the cradle. As for why she had pretended to be sick to call Qin Yiru back, it was because Zhang Taijun said that he saw Yun Jian at the auction. Not only that, Yun Jian had also bought a storefront with more than 10 million yuan. More than 10 million yuan. Zhang Meihua had never seen so much money in her life. Where did Yun Jian get the money from? She actually bought a lousy storefront with so much money. When Zhang Meihua first heard the news, she was flustered. Especially when she heard from Zhang Taijun that Yun Jian knew Mayor Gu. Forget that she knew Mayor Gu. Zhang Meihua was also Yun Jian's uncle-in-law. Not only did she not praise her uncle-in-law to Mayor Gu, she had even indirectly encouraged Mayor Gu to distance himself from Zhang Taijun. Zhang Meihua's mind you. Zhang Meihua, Zhang Meihua, Zhang Meihua's father. Zhang Meihua Qin Yiru was reprimanded for no reason. Biting her lip, she finally said meekly, "Mom, it's my fault." She. Touch your conscience and tell me, how does your sister's family treat you? Your family is suffering and starving. Isn't it all because your sister lent you money to tide you over? But look at your family's Yun Jian. She actually went to the auction alone. I don't know where she got more than 10 million yuan. More than 10 million yuan. She only bought a storefront. Also, your family's Yun Jian knows Mayor Gu. She knows Mayor Gu because she's capable. But how did she repay your sister's family? Tai Jun had something to ask of Mayor Gu. But what did your daughter do? She actually encouraged Mayor Gu to ignore Tai Jun. I was wondering why our Qin family gave birth to such an unfilial descendant like you. What sins have I, Zhang Meihua, committed? Chapter 156. Qin Yiru grew more shocked as she listened to Zhang Meihua, her eyes widening in the end. She glanced at Yun Jian and stuttered to defend Yun Jian to Zhang Meihua. Mom. How can Xiao Jian have more than 10 million yuan? How does she know Mayor Gu? There must be some kind of misunderstanding here. How can your brother-in-law be lying? Zhang Meihua interrupted Qin Yiru angrily, glaring at Qin Yiru at the same time. Zhang Taijun, who had been staring at Yun Jian for a long time, finally spoke up, his tone heavy with concern. Sis Yiru, how can I spout nonsense? Your Xiao Jian is right here. What happened that day is clear as day. Ask her if you don't believe me. Zhang Taijun had actually thought of many solutions after he was ignored that day. His plan could not go to waste. If Mayor Gu's plan was not approved, his funds would not be able to flow. In the end, there was only one result, and that was that the factory that he had set up with his friend would face the danger of bankruptcy. Hence, Zhang Taijun came up with a great idea. He came back to town and told Zhang Meihua everything about Yun Jian. This way, Zhang Meihua would stand up for him. As for Yun Jian's mother, Qin Yiru, she was Zhang Meihua's daughter after all, so she dared not disobey her. By then, as long as Qin Yiru reprimanded Yun Jian, she would not be afraid that the latter would refuse to help. Zhang Tiejuan's ultimate goal was for Yun Jian to convince Mayor Gu and get him to sign and stamp his approval document. Yun Jian was amused when she saw everyone's gaze on her. How could she not see through Zhang Taijun and Zhang Meihua's plan? In spite of it, Yun Jian was not flustered. Since she could do it, she naturally had a way to solve it. She looked at everyone coldly and her red lips curled up. That's right, I know Mayor Gu. After a pause, Yun Jian held back. She glanced sideways at everyone before looking at Qin Yiru and explained, lying smoothly, I bought the store on behalf of Mayor Gu. The money belongs to him too. It's inconvenient for him to show up, so I helped him bid for the store. When Yun Jian said that, Zhang Meihua's gaze on Yun Jian turned colder. She had thought that the money belonged to Yun Jian. If the money belonged to Yun Jian, no matter where it came from, it was reasonable that Yun Jian should be filial piety toward her as she was her grandmother. If Yun Jian was rich, Zhang Meihua's attitude toward her in the future would definitely improve. Yun to her. Now that Yun Jian had said so, everyone actually believed her. After all, she was just a student. How could she have more than 10 million yuan? However, Zhang Meihua did not intend to let go. Even if Yun Jian did not have money, she still knew Mayor Gu. Thus, Zhang Meihua immediately pointed at Yun Jian and ordered her aggressively. Since you know Mayor Gu, how could you smear your uncle's reputation? Your uncle has always treated your family well. Since the matter has been explained clearly, you should quickly contact Mayor Gu to help your uncle. Then this matter will be over. Zhang Meihua's tone sounded as if Yun Jian had done something wrong and had to make up for it. Yun Jian suddenly felt that it was laughable. Her explanation was meant for Qin Yiru, but they actually thought that she was explaining to everyone? Why should I help you? Because when my mother left the Yun family and had nowhere to go, as her family, you did not say a word and did not care about her life or death. Or because you came to collect debts from my mother when she was injured and hospitalized because you were afraid that she would not be able to repay them. Yun Jian suddenly narrowed her eyes and pointed out Zhang Meihua's and the others' evil deeds. At the same time, her aura suddenly changed, and a sinister chill assaulted everyone's hearts. Chapter 157. Hearing Yun Jian's blatant words, everyone was stunned. They did not expect her to actually say it. In fact, everyone knew what they were talking about, but Qin Yiru would never say such things in front of her elders. Even when her family was so unbearable, Qin Yiru tolerated it as much as she could. Now that her daughter had pointed it out so blatantly, Qin Yiru felt a stinging sensation in her nose for some reason. Recalling the suffering she had gone through all these years and the indifference of her family, tears pooled in her eyes. As her tears fell uncontrollably, Qin Yiru turned around in a fluster with her back facing everyone and wiped her tears. There was silence. She thought about how she would have died long ago if she did not have Qin Yiru and Xiao Jian. Yun Jian did not say anything as she rubbed Qin Yiru's back to comfort her. In spite of it, Yun Jian did not think that she was wrong. If she did not say these things out loud, they might become the source of Qin Yiru's pain for the rest of her life. She might become Zhang Meihua and the rest's exploitation machine for the rest of her life. She knew that she had never experienced human nature and did not know how to face it, but this was the only thing she would not admit. If they showed weakness to Zhang Meihua and the rest, it would mean that they could be so weak. This was not an outcome that Yun Jian could tolerate. Zhang Meihua and the rest were stunned as well. Zhang Meihua froze not because she was ashamed or remorseful. It was because it was the truth, but it was not something to be happy about when it came from someone else's mouth. Hence, Zhang Meihua slapped the table even more angrily and shouted at Yun Jian, "Because I gave birth to your mother. She's a piece of flesh that fell from my womb. Without me, your mother won't exist. You won't be born either. So you have to listen to me." Zhang Meihua did not say it out loud, but everyone else had added it in their minds. As she spoke, Zhang Meihua even swept away the chicken feathers on the table and knocked them on the table. She then reprimanded Qin Yiru. "Qin Yiru, look at your daughter. Siding with an outsider. You're still spouting nonsense." After saying this, Zhang Meihua completely ignored Qin Yiru's tear-stained face. She even criticized Yun Jian in front of Qin Yiru. "Your daughter is so petty and unfilial. She's already like this at such a young age. What can a person like her do when she grows up?" Zhang Meihua was indeed embarrassed from anger today. Zhang Meihua was a person who cared a lot about her reputation. Now that Yun Jian had revealed such a blatant truth in front of everyone, she naturally couldn't hold back her anger. After Zhang Meihua said this, Qin Junlan, who was beside her, chimed in. It was really one answering and one singing. Qin Liqian and the others were also on Zhang Meihua's side. Actually, Yun Jian's grandfather had passed away a few years ago due to illness. At that time, Yun Jian was still very young. In Yun Jian's memory, her grandfather was very good to Qin Yiru and even more so to the original Yun Jian. Sometimes, he would even secretly give all his hard-earned wages to Qin Yiru to subsidize her family's expenses. Of course, these things were hidden from Zhang Meihua. Later on, her grandfather, Qin Yiru, passed away. There was no one in the family who could support Qin Yiru anymore. Therefore, Qin Yiru rarely returned to her parents' home. Even after leaving the Yun family, she was unwilling to return to her parents' home. Instead, she chose to leave Xinjiang town with her child to seek refuge with her old friends. "I don't need someone like you to judge whether I'm successful or not. Old hag, if you dare to say another word, I guarantee that you won't see the sun tomorrow." After comforting Qin Yiru, Yun Jian turned around and stared sharply at Zhang Meihua and the others. Yun Jian's eyes turned a strange dark red. She looked like a murderous demon. Qin Junlan, who was standing beside Zhang Meihua, felt her eyelids twitch when she saw Yun Jian like this. Her. Qin Junlan was suddenly reminded of how Yun Jian had smashed a wooden stool in front of her in the hospital and how she had helped everyone dodge the sniper's bullet in the hotel. She pointed at Yun Jian and screamed at the top of her lungs. Because Yun Jian's gaze was just as terrifying as hers back then. "What are you screaming for?" Zhang Meihua's tone was obviously weaker when she spoke to Qin Junlan, but she still reprimanded her for screaming. Zhang Meihua even grumbled in her heart. Yun Jian only gave them a look. Look, did they have to be so scared? No matter what, Yun Jian was just a child. "Mom, you don't know. She smashed a wooden stool in the hospital with one kick. When we met at the hotel last time, she even pushed us to dodge the sniper's bullet." Qin Junlan suddenly remembered and was scared, so she screamed. Chapter 158. Zhang Meihua and her friends were good with their words in the past when they bickered with each other. However, when they really got into a fight, they would turn weak immediately without any ability. To put it bluntly, they were people who loved to spout nonsense and put on airs when they were actually weak. Especially when Qin Junlan said that Yun Jian crushed a wooden stool with one foot and led everyone to dodge the sniper's bullet. Zhang Meihua and her friends could not help shuddering just from listening to it. To them, it was as miraculous as a group of sows flying in the sky. Since it came from Qin Junlan, Zhang Meihua and the rest did not doubt the authenticity of her words. Therefore, all of them stared at Yun Jian in fear as if they were trying to see through Yun Jian. Since you said that I'm petty and unfilial, I'll do as you say today. How about I break your necks one by one right now? Seeing how fearful these people were of her after hearing what she said, Yun Jian changed her strategy as a faint voice came from her throat. Of course, she would not really break all of their necks. Even if she wanted to, Qin Yiru would probably not watch her do it. They were her family after all. Even if she abandoned everything and no matter how disgusting these people were, the blood relationship could not be severed. As expected, after Yun Jian spoke, Qin Yiru, who had been quietly wiping her tears, cried out, "Xiao Jian, don't!" Murder was illegal, not to mention that these people were related to her by blood. No matter how bad it was, Qin Yiru did not wish to see such an extreme scene happen. Qin Yiru could no longer be bothered with how Yun Jian had become so powerful. After so many days, Qin Yiru had gradually gotten used to Yun Jian's current personality. Whatever she said, she would definitely do it. Hence, Qin Yiru stopped Yun Jian right away. Yun Jian was unmoved by Qin Yiru's words. On the contrary, Yun Jian glanced sideways at Qin Yiru and told her with narrowed eyes, "Mom, stay out of this." With that, she glared daggers at Zhang Meihua and the others. Suddenly, she extended her hand and conjured a small knife out of nowhere like a magic trick. With a sinister smirk, she approached the men with a knife in her hand. "If I stab all of you to death with this knife, I don't think you'll feel any pain before you die." As Yun Jian spoke, she rubbed the sharp tip of the knife with her fingers, uttering the terrifying words in a normal tone. Qin Yiru would probably feel bad if she attacked Zhang Meihua and her family. Even if she scolded them, it would be useless because Zhang Meihua and her friends were shameless people. In spite of it, Yun Jian had countless ways to deal with such situations. She could even force a brainwashed assassin to talk, let alone Zhang Meihua and the others. She intended to teach these people a lesson. You, what are you trying to do?" Qin Junlan was so scared that she subconsciously retreated. She sounded like she was about to cry. It was obvious that what Yun Jian had done previously made her tremble in fear. Zhang Meihua was indeed Qin Junlan's mother. Not only were their tones and words similar, but they were also equally timid. Zhang Meihua was scared out of her wits by Yun Jian's eerie and terrifying actions. She kept retreating. The group of people retreated until they reached the corner of the wall. They could no longer retreat any further and stopped. "It's good that you're standing there. Let's see if my knife can hit one of your heads like a flying knife." Yun Jian chuckled evilly. As she spoke, she suddenly held the knife in her hand. What are you doing? What you're doing is illegal. Ah." The last sound came from the group of people's screams. It was because the saber in Yun Jian's hand was already flying toward where they were with the last clang. Qin Yiru could not stop it in time. She shouted, "No!" And Yun Jian had already thrown the knife. After the screams, the group of people who were leaning against the wall opened their eyes in fear. Zhang Meihua looked up slightly and saw that the knife was embedded in the wall right above her head. Zhang Meihua was dumbfounded. The group of people heaved a sigh of relief. Just then, Zhang Meihua, who was scared out of her wits, felt something warm flowing out from under her flowery pants. Everyone smelled the stench and looked over. They saw a yellowish liquid flowing out from under Zhang Meihua's pants. Everyone widened their eyes in shock. Chapter 159. TSK Tisk. When Yun Jian saw this scene, she held her chin with her hand and sighed. Her goal was to scare them so that they would not dare to cause trouble for Qin Yiru in the future. However, he didn't expect Zhang Meihua to be so aggressive and fearless all the time. She only teased them a little and Zhang Meihua was so scared that she peed her pants. "Really? You can't judge a book by its cover. Let me tell you, if today's incident happens again, Yun Jian glanced at the people who were paralyzed with fear. She paused and continued, "If it happens again, this knife will pierce through your heads. I, Yun Jian, am a woman of my words. If you don't believe me, wipe your heads clean and wait for me." Yun Jian realized that ever since she was reborn, she had done a lot of threatening and frightening things. If this had happened in her previous life, the group of people in front of her would have turned into corpses. However, her identity was different now and her situation was different. More importantly, she had her mother and brother. Especially in a society ruled by law, killing people was illegal. Her nature was slowly changing. It was just that Yun Jian did not notice it. After Yun Jian finished speaking, she tiptoed and took the knife from the wall above Qin Yiru. Then, she turned and walked to Qin Yiru. She pulled Qin Yiru's hand and walked out. She did not want to stay here for a second longer. Presumably, Qin Yiru felt the same way. Seeing Yun Jian's actions, no one dared to make a sound. When they saw Yun Jian pulling Qin Yiru away, Zhang Meihua was like a balloon that had lost its air. She fell to the ground with a thump. It was only when they were far away from the Qin residence that Qin Yiru shuddered, tears streaming down her cheeks like a faucet. Yun Jian did not know how to comfort Qin Yiru. She placed her hand on Qin Yiru's back and rubbed gently to comfort her. Just when Yun Jian thought that Qin Yiru would be quiet for a long time, Qin Yiru suddenly spoke. She closed her eyes like she had made a decision before she sighed and said mournfully, "Xiao Jian, I want to go somewhere." Qin Yiru did not mention a word about Yun Jian's unusual skills. Yun Jian breathed a sigh of relief when she did not ask. Xinjiang Town. Mount Wui. Mount Wui was an ordinary mountain range that was located near Xinjiang Town. Near the Wui mountain was farmland, but there was a cemetery dedicated to the burial of the older generation after they had passed away. Yun Jian's grandfather, Qin Youfu, was buried here. When Qin Yiru was in Xinjiang Town, she would come here alone every few days to pay respects to her father who had been the best to her when he was alive. She would remove the weeds in front of his grave, so that others would not mistake it as an untended grave. Life and death were like fleeting clouds in Qin Yiru's eyes. In the blink of an eye, her father had passed away for so many years. She was still in a daze even now. "Xiao Jian, he's your grandpa," Qin Yiru told Yun Jian as she stared at the old man's black photo on the tombstone with teary eyes. Yun Jian followed Qin Yiru's gaze and saw the old man's frail yet benevolent black and white photo. Yun Jian knew that Qin Yiru missed her father. She had received too little familial love. Her husband's betrayal and disloyalty, her family's lack of understanding and resentment. The only father who treated her well had passed away early. The original owner of the body was immature. Although she was well behaved, she never understood Qin Yiru's pain. Qin Yiru could only endure it alone. Yun Jian went over and gently rested Qin Yiru's head on her shoulder before patting her back. Yun Jian spoke softly and gently. "Mom, let's live well. Live a more glorious life than anyone else. Grandpa will be happy to see this from heaven." Qin Yiru's tears dripped onto Yun Jian's shoulder. She nodded with clenched teeth, feeling warm and sorrowful at the same time. The feeling was indescribable. Those who were alive had to live well. Yun Jian did not know why she said that. Chapter 160. Before leaving Mount Wui and returning to Longmen City, Yun Jian went to Lu Fian's house. Her return to Xinjiang Town this time was unexpected, but since she was back, Yun Jian went to visit Lu Fian as well. It did not take long before she boarded the bus back to Longmen City. When Li Xiangyi, Wu Kuei, and when Rui's basketball team heard that Yun Jian had returned to Xinjiang Town, they abandoned their ongoing basketball match and rushed to Lu Fian's house. It was a pity that Yun Jian had already returned to Longmen City. After spending a weekend at home, Yun Jian was about to go to school with her backpack when she saw a tall and muscular man standing in front of her when she exited the villa. The man was standing with his body turned to the side. His face was rather handsome from the side, but there was a hint of gentleness between his brows. Yun Jian recognized him immediately. He was none other than CE's subordinate, the calm man named Mo. Senator. Speaking of CE, Yun Jian had not seen him since CE left due to an emergency during the banquet in Country M. She was slightly taken aback when she saw CE's subordinate, but she went over anyway. "Miss Yun," Mo-sen called out to Yun Jian politely, a respectful expression on his handsome face. "Mm." Yun Jian turned to look at Mo-sen with her backpack slung over her shoulder. She smiled. Is something the matter? Young master asked me to pass this to you. Mo Sen did not explain further as he fished out an envelope from his pocket and passed it to Yun Jian. His gaze was dark. After Yun Jian took the envelope, he continued, Young master said that you'll understand after reading this. After saying that, Mo Sen took 2 steps back, turned around and left. He was only here to deliver the letter. Yun Jian was baffled. She extended her slender fingers to open the envelope swiftly and pulled out a note from it. Reading the note, Yun Jian lowered her gaze and grinned all of a sudden. As expected, the old guys from the Wuxia mercenaries couldn't sit still anymore. They even extended their influence to the Han organization. However, Yun Jian didn't know why Ce had told her that these old men wanted to work with Han. Did Ce notice that he was the boss of the Wuxia mercenaries? Now, Yun Jian had basically confirmed Ce's identity. Who else could Ce be able to make Shui Ying, one of the 4 leaders of the Han organization, his subordinate other than the leader of the organization? Yun Jian was not surprised because she was an agent trained by the Han organization. She had some understanding of the Han organization. For example, the leader of Han was a young man. She had always known about this, although she didn't know who it was. Other than that, she couldn't find any other relevant information even in her past life. She just didn't expect Ce to be the leader of Han organization. It was obvious that Ce did not plan to hide his identity from Yun Jian since he admitted that Shui Ying was his subordinate in front of her. Yun Jian could not wrap her head around it. When Yun Jian returned to school after the weekend self-study session, a girl rushed into the classroom just as she placed her bag on the table. This person was none other than Chen Xinyi, who had a carefree personality and was never overcautious. Since the kidnapping incident, Chen Xinyi had completely recovered. She ran to Yun Jian and held up a form in her hand with a chuckle, telling Yun Jian, "Ha ha ha, Jian, did you know? I heard from the English teacher in the office just now that some of the top students from DE Senior High School are going to be sent to a foreign school for a week as foreign exchange students. Our school has 5 spots and they've all been allocated to Year 3 students. I've been selected too. Your results are so good that you're already a candidate. This means that we can go abroad for further studies together." Chen Xinyi shook Yun Jian's hand excitedly, overjoyed. Chen Xinyi was the English class representative. Her results were decent, but there were many others who were better than her. Nevertheless, it was a surprise that she was selected this time due to her high level of English. Yun Jian did not express any joy or worry about the sudden news. When she heard that the students from DE Senior High School were going as well, she could not help raising a brow. Chapter 161. What about me? What about me? Zhang Xiaofan was the first to pop his head over and ask excitedly when he heard that they were representing the school to study abroad. Forget about it. Haha, your English is so bad and you don't know anything about speaking. You're not part of this. Chen Xinyi teased Zhang Xiaofan as she waved the form in her hand. The brother and sister pair were in an uproar. Yun Jian was already used to such things, so she merely pressed her lips together. If her brother was going, she was going as well. Moreover, if Qin Yiru heard that both of them were representing the school to participate in such an honorable event, she would probably be thrilled, right? As it turned out, Qin Yiru held her cheeks as tears streamed down her cheeks when she heard the news. These were the tears of a mother who was touched to hear that her children were fighting for her honor after going through so much. When Yun Jian heard Chen Xinyi say that the top students of DE Senior High School were being sent to an overseas school as exchange students for a week, she already knew that her brother, Yun Yi, would definitely be on the list of invitees. It was because her brother, Yun Yi, was the first to be invited as the top student representative of DE Senior High School. Since the event this time was related to the school's and even the country's honor, all the students who participated in this trip would be reimbursed by their superiors. In other words, the participants did not have to pay for anything out of their own pocket, unless they wanted to buy souvenirs from overseas. Qin Yiru breathed a huge sigh of relief when she heard about it. She did not have any money, but she would definitely blame herself if her daughter and son were to lose such a chance to perform because of this. Xiao Jian, Xiao Yi, you're both my pride. Qin Yiru wiped her tears and took out a few crumpled 100 yuan bills that she had been keeping for a long time from her pocket, wanting to give 50 yuan each to Yun Jian and Yun Yi as she spoke. Take it. You still have to spend what you need to when you're overseas. Don't let others laugh at you. Qin Yiru pushed the money into their hands. Mom, we don't need to spend any money. The school will take care of our food and accommodation. Yun Yi quickly stuffed the money back into Qin Yiru's hands. He knew that this money was the salary that Qin Yiru had saved for a long time. Yun Jian held the money in her hand and felt warm in her heart. She was not in a hurry to return the money to Qin Yiru. The wealth that she had was more than what an ordinary person could spend in a few lifetimes. However, in her heart, this huge wealth was not as warm as the 50 yuan that Qin Yiru had given her. After a long time, Yun Jian finally put the money on the table and pushed it in front of Qin Yiru. Mom, I don't want this money. You know that I know Mayor Gu, and I have a partnership with him. I don't lack pocket money. Yun Jian's words were ambiguous, but she expressed her meaning. She could only use Mayor Gu and come up with a random lie now. Xiao Jian you. Qin Yiru was stunned and was about to speak when Yun Jian interrupted her. She even took out 2 100 yuan notes from her pocket and placed them gently on the table, pressing her lips together. It's true, Mom. You have to believe me. This money is earned legitimately. If she took out all her money and showed it to Qin Yiru would probably faint from shock. Thus, she could only take it slowly and let Qin Yiru digest it slowly. Qin Yiru opened her mouth but swallowed her words in the end. She looked at Yun Jian in relief and said while holding back her tears, "Good girl, it's Mom who's useless. You guys have suffered." Going overseas required going through the procedures. Underage children had to go through a series of complicated procedures such as their parents' signatures. Qin Yiru did not go to work today. She had applied for leave to go through the procedures for the 2 children. The diplomatic event this time was set to be held a month later, so there was still plenty of time for the students to prepare or pack up. When Yun Jian returned to school this week, she was summoned to the office for some reason. It was only when she arrived that she saw an unfamiliar middle-aged man standing in front of her. The man was sitting upright, dressed in ordinary clothes but exuding the righteousness of a soldier. Chapter 162. Gu Junjian recognized Yun Jian, but Yun Jian didn't recognize him. Hence, when his gaze landed on Yun Jian, she frowned. Standing beside Gu Junjian was their homeroom teacher, Mr. Yu. The moment Gu Junjian saw Yun Jian, he could tell that she was the person he was looking for. He had seen her photo before. She was an obedient and beautiful young lady. Hence, he strode towards Yun Jian. "You're Yun Jian." Gu Yunjian's cheerful voice carried a hint of nervousness. Not only was he a soldier, but he was also the leader of the National Special Forces. At the same time, he was also a scout who discovered the potential of the young generation to become Special Forces soldiers. The Special Forces soldiers were also commonly known as special agents. The special agents here were different from the underground agents in Yun Jian's previous life. The special agents here were loyal to the country. However, not everyone could become a special agent if they wanted to. Sometimes, they even needed extraordinary talent. Hence, whenever Gu Junjian met a young person who was agile, he would pull them into the ranks of the Special Forces soldiers he trained. Yun Jian was able to kill the internationally famous cold-faced killer, Wolf Blade, all by herself. It was obvious that she was definitely a powerful person. At least, even as the leader of the National Advanced Special Forces, Gu Junjian couldn't do it. Hence, he planned to recruit her. "I am." Yun Jian narrowed her eyes. She glanced at Mr. Yu, then turned to look at Gu Junjian. When Gu Junjian heard Yun Jian admit it, he was delighted. He rolled his eyes and asked her, "Then did you appear in a large factory in the suburbs a few days ago?" This was the place where Yun Jian killed Wolf Blade. However, Gu Junjian couldn't directly ask her if she killed Wolf Blade in front of Mr. Yu. She was actually probing Yun Jian indirectly with her words. Yun Jian looked up. Although she didn't know why Gu Junjian asked this, she was used to not answering such questions. No. She never blinks when she tells a lie. Even Gu Junjian, who had always been close to her, could not tell that Yun Jian was lying. Could he have gotten the wrong person? She wasn't the one who killed Wolf Blade that day? Gu Junjian frowned and fell silent for a moment. A trace of disappointment appeared in his eyes. "Then I'm sorry. It seems that I've got the wrong person." Gu Junjian lowered his eyes and turned to leave the office. When the teachers in the office saw this, they were all puzzled, including Teacher Yu. When Gu Junjian arrived, He showed his certificate of assisting the police investigation. Coupled with what he said just now, could it be that Yun Jian was involved in something bad? Or did she do something wrong and get arrested by the police? If such a thing really happened, it wouldn't be a good thing for the school. However, before the teachers had time to think about it, Gu Junjian, who had already walked 2 steps past Yun Jian toward the office door, suddenly turned around. With lightning speed, he clenched his fist and swung it directly at Yun Jian. When the teachers in the office saw this scene, they were so frightened that they screamed. The strength of this sudden sneak attack was obvious. Was he planning to beat the thin and weak Yun Jian into meat paste with this punch? The teachers could almost predict the tragic outcome. Teacher Yu's heart tightened even more. Yun Jian was her student. If something happened to her in school, she had to take responsibility. Just when everyone was sure that Gu Junjian must have gone crazy and would suddenly throw a powerful punch at Yun Jian and guarantee that Yun Jian wouldn't be able to fight back and would be beaten to the ground, Yun Jian's eyes suddenly sharpened. She flipped her hand and easily caught Gu Junjian's domineering iron fist. She kicked Gu Junjian to the ground with her leg and held Gu Junjian's arm with one hand. Just like the police, she pinned Gu Junjian to the ground. This action frightened all the teachers in the office. In their hearts, students were good at learning. Whoever was good at learning and studying would have a bright future. Some teachers even liked to pretend to be high profile in front of their students. For example, if a teacher forgot to bring her books during class, she would casually ask a student to run an errand for her. The student wouldn't dare to disobey, because if the student didn't listen, the teacher would make things difficult for the student in the future. These teachers had never seen such a brutal scene, especially when Yun Jian actually single-handedly took down Gu Junjian, who had a strong physique. The group of teachers suddenly became uneasy. Chapter 163. Just when the teachers thought that Gu Junjian would fly into a rage, they heard a deep and clear male voice. Ha ha ha. Good job. Gu Junjian retracted his arm. Yun Jian did not stop him either. He stood up and laughed loudly, looking at Yun Jian again. The person in the factory that day was really you. How could a normal person be so calm when faced with such a surprise attack and suppress him instead? Gu Junjian knew that he was not weak. He also knew how agile Yun Jian was just now. Even if she had wanted to kill him just now, he probably would not have been able to retaliate. This thought deepened Gu Junjian's thoughts. Yun Jian lowered her gaze. She did not expect Gu Junjian to make such a move, but since that was the case, she did not have to pretend anymore. Why are you looking for me? Yun Jian pursed her lips and asked. Let me introduce myself again. My name is Gu Junjian. I'm the captain of the country's advanced special forces. Gu Junjian was not afraid of revealing his identity in front of the teachers. As he spoke, he paused, then extended an invitation to Yun Jian in front of all the teachers. Now, on behalf of the country's advanced special forces, I would like to formally invite you to join us. Inviting Yun Jian to join the country's advanced special forces. The teachers' jaws dropped, all of them tongue-tied in shock. Gu Junjian had claimed to be a police officer in front of the teachers, and now he was the captain of the special forces. He wanted to invite Yun Jian to join them. Everyone knew that anyone who could be invited to join the advanced special forces would have a bright future that the teachers present could not compare to. Yun Jian, she actually had the honor to be personally invited by Gu Junjian, the captain of the advanced special forces. Just when the teachers thought that Yun Jian would immediately agree to Gu Junjian's request, she raised a brow and said, I refuse. Why? This exclamation came from Gu Junjian. One had to know that those who could enter the advanced special forces were the cream of the crop. It was an honor that everyone yearned for. And she actually refused? Reason. Yun Jian wasn't in a hurry. In front of everyone, she used her leg to hook a stool in front of the teacher's desk and sat down. She crossed her legs and looked at Gu Junjian. If Yun Jian did such a thing normally, the teachers would definitely scold her severely. She was still so arrogant and despotic in the teacher's office. She didn't know her identity as a student. But now the teachers, who were usually dignified and proud, did not even dare to breathe loudly. Gu Junjian immediately understood what Yun Jian meant. He smiled again as he thought about how Yun Jian was so young, and yet she did not immediately agree to his request for fame and fortune. Thus he smiled and promised, as long as you agree to join us, You can do whatever you want in Z country. As long as you don't take anyone's life recklessly. While you're in Z country, be it in or out of the country, the advanced special forces will be your strong backing. The condition was very tempting to Yun Jian. She was in Z country, but she would gradually be related to the underground organizations in her past life. What she hated the most was to see her family being harmed because of her when she was not around. Perhaps Qin Yiru and Yun Yi would be captured and used to threaten her because of her. Just like in her past life, it was because she did not have 3 heads and 6 arms that her younger brother was captured by the enemy and used to threaten her when she was on a mission. In the end, she lost her family tragically. Joining Gu Yunjian's team would guarantee that Qin Yiru and Yun Yi would be well protected even if she was not in Longmen City in the future. The country's protection for them would not allow them to be harmed easily. Moreover, Gu Junjian meant that even if she injured someone in the future and was taken to the police station, she could be released immediately. Was this the treatment of the advanced special forces? Chapter 164. She agreed again? The teachers were still in a daze as they watched the scene unfold before them. Did that mean that Yun Jian would be a citizen of the country from now on? Even if her family background was poor, as long as she was a citizen of the country, these teachers would not dare to lay a finger on her. Welcome to the team. Gu Junjian was overjoyed when he heard that Yun Jian had agreed. From the exchange of blows with Yun Jian earlier, he could feel that Yun Jian alone was more powerful than all the young elites he had recruited from the team put together. How could Gu Junjian not be surprised that such a powerful person had joined them? Yun Jian nodded slightly and pursed her lips. Then I'll look for you on Friday after school. I'll introduce you to the young advanced special forces candidates that we've discovered, Gu Junjian continued. People of Yun Jian's age would definitely not become members of the advanced special forces right away after joining them. Usually, those who had just joined the organization were candidates. Of course, it was only a matter of time before young people with potential like Yun Jian would truly become national advanced special forces after joining the organization. Yun Jian nodded again. Naturally, she had no objections. The teachers were still in a daze when Gu Junjian left the school after instructing their homeroom teacher, Teacher Yu. It had only been a short while and Yun Jian had become a member of the country's special forces. However, the teachers were not dumb enough to spread the news everywhere. After all, if they were the ones who spread the news, they would not be able to compensate for it even if they had 10 times the courage. Hence, other than the people present, no one else knew about what had happened in the office. Friday, after school. Yun Jian walked out of the school gate with Chen Xini and Zhang Xiaofan. Behind them was Ling Yichen. Just as they reached the school gate, Yun Jian saw Gu Junjian waiting for her in a flashy military jeep. When he saw Yun Jian, Gu Junjian honked his horn. Yun Jian turned to tell Chen Xini and the rest, "You guys go first." Then, under their watchful gazes, she walked towards the dark green military jeep. She opened the car door and sat in the front passenger seat. Then, under everyone's gaze, the military jeep slowly drove away and left their field of vision. Gu Junjian drove for a long distance, even out of the bustling city area and into the suburbs. Not long after driving out of the city's downtown area, Yun Jian saw a neat row of military garrisons in the forest. When they passed the guard post and entered the area, Gu Junjian got out of the car and walked over to open the door for Yun Jian. He said, "We're here. Come with me." Yun Jian nodded and followed Gu Junjian to a military training camp. Just as she opened the door of the military training camp, Yun Jian felt a sense of danger coming towards her. Without thinking, she reached out her hand and grabbed in front of her. A harmless dart with a broken arrowhead had deviated from its trajectory and was flying straight towards Yun Jian. However, Yun Jian caught it in the middle of her palm. It deviated from its trajectory again. I threw it wrong again. A sorrowful female voice was heard. Then, a young girl about the same age as Yun Jian appeared in front of them. "Chu Ning, what's wrong with you?" Seeing this, Gu Junjian breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, Yun Jian reacted quickly. Otherwise, even if the dart had no arrowhead, it would still hurt someone. He scolded the young girl. "Officer Gu, I didn't do it on purpose." Chu Ning pouted, feeling wronged. Suddenly, her eyes lit up and she looked straight at Yun Jian. She was overjoyed. Wow, is she the new little girl? Chapter 165. That's great. Chu Ning's face lit up with joy when she heard that. Chu Ning was not the only one in the military training camp. When they heard that Yun Jian was the new girl, a few boys who were training nearby ran over. Chu Ning was speaking to Yun Jian in a cheerful tone. Hello, I'm Chu Ning. I'm 16 this year. You must be the new girl. You're so pretty, can we be friends? As she spoke, Chu Ning blinked her clear and pretty eyes and looked at Yun Jian with a friendly gaze. I'm Yun Jian. Yun Jian did not answer her directly, but since she was willing to introduce herself, it meant that she had acknowledged her. Little girl. I'm Chu Xiangnan. I'm 18 this year. You can call me Big Brother, haha. A boy squeezed in from the side. He laughed heartily and pushed Chu Ning out of the way. Then, he stood in front of Yun Jian and introduced himself teasingly. Yun Jian only nodded slightly when she saw that. During this time, she took the opportunity to look around. There were not many people in the military training camp. Other than herself and Gu Junjian, there were only 6 people. They were all between 15 and 20 years old, and she was the youngest in the group. Presumably, this group of people was the same as her, who had been selected by Gu Junjian as candidates for the Advanced Special Forces. All right, you guys get to know each other. Gu Junjian did not disturb them. After he said that, he turned to look at Yun Jian and said to her, from now on, you'll come here to train every week. Of course, if you have something to do, you can report it in advance. The facilities here were very complete. It was a good place to train and improve one's skills. Yun Jian nodded naturally. She had been lacking a place like this to train her skills thoroughly. Now, she was even more satisfied with her decision to join the special forces. Gu Junjian left after giving his instructions. As soon as he left, a group of people surrounded Yun Jian and introduced themselves to her. Yun Jian finally got to know him. Including himself, there were only 7 people here. Among the 7 people, there were 3 girls and 4 boys. From this, it could be seen that among the special forces, boys' stamina was indeed better than girls. Just as the group was introducing themselves, a woman's sarcastic voice sounded, "Humph, childish. They really look like a bunch of idiots who have never seen the world." The voice belonged to the other girl besides Chu Ning. Ever since Yun Jian arrived, this girl hadn't made a sound, nor had she walked over. Now that she was snorting, people couldn't help but take another look at her. Yun Jian, ignore her. That's just how she is. Humph, that's why I was so lonely here before. I didn't even have a girl to talk to. Chu Ning spat at the girl and explained to Yun Jian. After saying that, Chu Ning couldn't help but yell at the girl, Zhang Weiwei, you're the idiot. After yelling angrily, Chu Ning turned to look at Yun Jian and chuckled. But she's the most powerful one in our group. We can't deny that. But with her personality, not many people can stand her. You'll know in the future. Chu Ning grinned as she said that. Yun Jian nodded. Pursing her lips, she also smiled slightly. After everyone introduced themselves, they were no longer familiar with each other and returned to their own training grounds to begin training. Chapter 166. Yun Jian nodded. She could understand why Gu Junjian would train them like this. After all, even as an advanced special forces candidate, one needed to be capable to be selected. More importantly, as an advanced special forces soldier, the enemies they would face in the future would not be simple. If they were not skilled enough, they could very well lose their lives. Under such circumstances, it was natural that they had to strengthen their physical training. As for the other 6 people who were selected like her, Yun Jian had already gotten to know all of them. Yun Jian did not hesitate and started training with the rest of them. For a moment, there were no other noises in the military training camp. There was only the sound of training and everyone sweating profusely. When it was time to go home at night, Gu Junjian drove everyone home and asked them to gather at the military training camp the next morning. Yun Jian nodded. She usually trained by herself, but now that she had a place to train, it would be easier for her to improve her skills. The next day, as expected, Gu Junjian brought everyone to the military training camp early in the morning. Yun Jian did not ask Gu Junjian to tell Qin Yiru about this. Qin Yiru only thought that the school teacher wanted the students to stay in class to make up for the extra lessons, even during the weekends. That was why Yun Jian left early and returned late on the weekends. That morning, everyone arrived at the military training camp. Yun Jian jumped out of the military jeep and walked towards the military training camp. The other 6 got out of the jeep and walked with Yun Jian. The morning sun shone on their bright foreheads and reflected their silhouettes. A new journey had just begun here. Outside the military training camp, there was a spacious field with no one around. Gu Junjian stood with his hands behind his back. Looking at the 7 people lined up in a row, he said seriously, "From this morning onwards, I'm going to increase your training. Each of you will carry 5 kilograms of weight and do a 5 kilometers cross-country run." This was the way Special Forces soldiers were trained. However, Gu Junjian had reduced their weights. A normal Special Forces soldier would usually be fully equipped for cross-country running. Fully armed off-road vehicles with a weight of more than 20 kilograms. Even so, the people present all let out miserable shrieks. "Ah, that will tire me to death." The first cry came from Chu Ning, while the second was Chu Xiangnan's sorrowful cry. In spite of it, the others, including Yun Jian, did not make a sound. Yun Jian also noticed that Chu Ning and Chu Xiangnan were the most active among them. To put it bluntly, he was talking too much. However, Gu Junjian pretended not to hear him. He said, "All right, follow me to equip yourselves. We'll start the morning training immediately." In fact, the cross-country running training for Special Forces soldiers was somewhat similar to the running training for students during military training. However, the cross-country running required a lot of stamina. Hence, the runners had to have a lot of stamina to complete the entire run. After everyone had equipped themselves and was about to start the cross-country run, Chu Xiangnan did not forget to tease Yun Jian. He wanted to show off in front of the girl. "Little Yun Jian, you're new here. If you can't keep up, you'll have to run slower later." To Chu Xiangnan and others, Yun Jian was a newbie who had just joined, so she was naturally the weakest among them. At this moment, a voice interrupted them. "Is everyone equipped?" The person who spoke was the leader of the 7, Lu Shiyun. Lu Shiyun was the leader of the 7. This was decided before Yun Jian joined the team. Although Jiang Weiwei was the strongest among them, Lu Shiyun was relatively more mature. Hence, Gu Junjian made him the leader. "Leader, we're ready." One of the boys replied with a bright smile. He even turned to Chu Xiangnan and teased, "Chu Xiangnan, stop teasing little girls. Every time a new member joins the team, you'll nag for half a day. Little girls need to be protected. Why are you dawdling all day long?" Chapter 167. Go, go, go. It's none of your business. Chu Xiangnan loved to flaunt his authority, especially in front of girls. He was even more unwilling to lose his dignity, so he retorted. Yun Jian pursed her lips indifferently and remained silent. She put on all her combat gear and stood still. Among the 7 of them, Yun Jian, Chu Ning, and Jiang Weiwei were the girls. As for the boys, apart from Chu Xiangnan, Feng Xiaoran, and the team leader Lu Shiyun, there was another boy. In a team, there would naturally be a team leader and a vice leader. The remaining boy was called Hong Fan. He was an average-looking, tall, skinny, and handsome boy. At the same time, Hong Fan was a very quiet boy. He did not say a word at all. However, since Gu Junjian had recruited him into the team, there must be a reason. Hong Fan, on the other hand, was currently the vice captain. "Everyone is ready. Let's start," Lu Shiyun said without Gu Junjian's instructions. With that, Lu Shiyun took the lead and ran towards the cross-country morning jog route. "Humph." Jiang Weiwei glanced at everyone from the corner of her eyes and glared at Yun Jian arrogantly. She was the second to run out. Then, everyone ran along the route. Yun Jian was not in a hurry. She waited for everyone to run out before running leisurely at the back. Gu Junjian, who was watching from the starting point, narrowed his eyes. He could not figure out why Yun Jian was running at the back instead of rushing out like a swarm of bees after the start of the race like the rest of the team. After all, although the morning cross-country race did not take into account the rankings, everyone had some idea of the results. "Little sister Yun Jian, don't be in a hurry. Take your time if you can't run. I'll go first." Chu Xiangnan saw that Yun Jian was running at the back and waved at her. Finally, he carried the combat gear on his shoulder and ran forward. At this moment, Jiang Weiwei, who was running in first place, was already far ahead. Yun Jian maintained the same pace as the last one. Her pace was neither fast nor slow, but it was just right. Meanwhile, the few people in front of her gradually felt their footsteps become heavier. The 5 kilograms of combat gear on their shoulders were not for show. It was quite uncomfortable to have to drag oneself forward while carrying the gear on one's back at the same time. For a moment, only the sound of panting could be heard on the road. Only Yun Jian, who was running at the back, was closing the distance between her and the person in front of her. The biggest difference between Yun Jian and Chu Xiongnan was that Chu Xiongnan was already panting. On the other hand, Yun Jian, other than her slightly red cheeks, she was not even panting. Was not even panting. Of her breath. Of Savav of the race. Of the race. Of his Sav of the world. Yun Jian had actually overtaken me. He did not even hear Yun Jian's heavy panting. Did that mean that Yun Jian was not tired at all? He was about to die of exhaustion, but this new little girl was walking so easily that it was as if she was just walking. Chu Xiongnan was running at the back. Because the route was straight and there were no trees around, he could clearly see the position of the person in front of him even if there were bends. Therefore he was running at the back. He watched as Yun Jian maintained a steady pace and overtook the people in front of her who were gradually slowing down. His heart was filled with shock. She was just a new member. Generally, the new members were the weakest. They would only improve after a period of training. Today was Yun Jian's second day at the training ground. At this moment, she had already overtaken everyone and was running in second place. She was chasing after the strongest person in the group, Jiang Weiwei. Chapter 168. Phew! Damn, Yun Jian is about to overtake Jiang Weiwei. Feng Xiaoran, who had been overtaken by Yun Jian, shouted loudly. He finally realized that he had lost his composure. Not talking while running was the basis for conserving energy. Feng Xiaoran obviously couldn't control himself. At this moment, Yun Jian was about to overtake Jiang Weiwei. When Jiang Weiwei heard Feng Xiaoran's complaints, she realized that Yun Jian was already right behind her. She frowned deeply. She was born into a military family and her ancestors were all soldiers or special forces. Her father was a high-ranking military officer and her mother was also an outstanding soldier. She inherited the family business and had been practicing her skills since she was a child. Hence, she was naturally the best among the group. Perhaps because of this, Jiang Weiwei had always looked down on Chu Ning and the rest. It was because in her heart, they were not even her opponents. Jiang Weiwei was also a competitive person. She also looked down on Yun Jian, but now that the steady Yun Jian was about to overtake her, she couldn't stay calm anymore. Her pride wouldn't allow anyone to destroy it, let alone this newcomer Yun Jian. Jiang Weiwei sprinted even harder, and she gradually felt as if her feet weighed 1,000 pounds. Seeing that she was gradually slowing down and Yun Jian was about to catch up with her, Jiang Weiwei's vanity acted up. Just as Yun Jian was about to overtake her, she made an extreme move in front of everyone. She turned sideways and blocked Yun Jian's path. She reached out and slammed into Yun Jian. At this moment, everyone was already exhausted and Jiang Weiwei took advantage of the situation. A normal person would definitely fall to the ground after being hit by her. However, Yun Jian seemed to have predicted Jiang Weiwei's move. She dodged to the side the moment Jiang Weiwei turned her body to crash into her. At the same time, she reached out her hand to block with lightning speed. She had already slipped past Jiang Weiwei's side and ran to the first position. This unforeseen event caused the few people following behind to widen their eyes in shock. They were watching from afar, but they could see everything clearly. The move that Yun Jian had just performed was the move that Gu Junjian had demonstrated to them earlier. They didn't even know this move, so how did Yun Jian learn it? Or rather, when Gu Junjian demonstrated to them, Yun Jian had not even joined the team yet. Could it be that she had long grasped the effective moves of these Special Forces soldiers? What they didn't know was that not only did Yun Jian know the moves of the Special Forces, she even knew the moves that the Special Forces didn't know. Jiang Weiwei's shock was no less than anyone else's. She was well aware of her own skills. Even an adult would have lost his or her composure, let alone a group of Special Forces candidates like them. And Yun Jian actually dodged his attack? Looking ahead again, Yun Jian's petite and agile figure had already flashed past a hillside, running towards an area that no one could see. At the starting point, Gu Junjian stood there and waited. The starting point and the finishing point were the same. If they ran along that path, they would eventually run back to the starting point, so he had been standing there the whole time. It had only been 10 minutes since the few of them started running, so Gu Junjian wasn't in a hurry. For an armed cross-country run like this, even an adult special forces soldier would be considered very good if they could finish it in 15 minutes. From Gu Yunjian's point of view, Yun Jian and the rest were just teenagers. The estimated time that he had given Yun Jian and the rest was 30 minutes. Thinking about it, the fastest person should be able to finish the race in 30 minutes. Chapter 169. Yun Jian completed the 5 kilograms 5 kilometers off-road run in just 10 minutes. Gu Junjian was almost shocked. To be honest, he had trained quite a number of young talents. Moreover, all of the special forces that he had trained had become famous big shots in the end. However, he had never seen anyone with such amazing ability. Reporting, mission accomplished. Yun Jian reported when she reached the finish line and took off her uniform. You completed it. Well done. This was the highest praise that Gu Junjian had ever given her. However, apart from Yun Jian, Gu Yunjian's prediction was right. Zhang Weiwei came in second. Zhang Weiwei finished the entire run. By the time she reached the finish line, she was already panting from exhaustion. When she reached the finish line, she held onto the pole and panted. This was a stark contrast to Yun Jian. Zhang Weiwei completed the 5 kilograms 5 kilometers off-road run in a short time. However, with Yun Jian's example as a lesson, her results were not good enough. The rest of the people also reached the finish line one after another. Chu Xiongnan was the slowest. Although he was much slower than the others, he also completed the run in 45 minutes. Obviously, the new morning run with weights was just the beginning. The rest of the morning and afternoon was still free practice. At 6 o'clock, Gu Junjian drove the jeep to the entrance of the training camp on time to send everyone home. Yun Jian and the others got into the jeep. Just as the jeep drove out of the sentry post, Gu Junjian suddenly stepped on the emergency brake. Yun Jian and the others were sitting at the back. Chu Ning and the others almost hit their heads on the glass window beside the jeep. Officer Gu, what's wrong? What's wrong? Chu Ning asked anxiously. Yun Jian saw a familiar black Lamborghini blocking the jeep driven by Gu Junjian through the glass window in front of the jeep from the back. She narrowed her eyes and her eyes lit up. The corners of her mouth unconsciously curled into a smile. Yun Jian opened the door and jumped out of the jeep. Under the gaze of several people in the jeep, she walked towards the black Lamborghini. Looking at Siyi's handsome face, which she hadn't seen in a long time, her lips curved into a smile that even she herself didn't notice. Why are you here? She asked. She knew that Siyi could find out that she was here just by moving his fingers. Get in. Siyi tilted her head and looked at Yun Jian. Her gaze softened as she sized her up, as if she was looking at a rare treasure. Yun Jian smiled. She ran to the jeep and said to Gu Junjian, "My friend is here to pick me up. You don't have to worry about me. Go ahead." With that, she ran back to the Lamborghini and opened the door to the passenger seat. Like a little girl in love, she happily sat in the car. Yun Jian did not notice her actions at all. Then, the Lamborghini sped away under the gaze of Gu Junjian and the rest, leaving the group to let their imagination run wild. Chu Xiongnan in particular, wore a sad expression and sighed. So, Lil Sis Yun Jian is taken. I was thinking of wooing her. In the Lamborghini that was driving away, Yun Jian turned to look at Ce and asked, "When did you come back to Country Z?" "Just now." Ce paused and said something that made one's imagination run wild. "I came to look for you right after I got back to Longmen City." Ce did not actually say that he did not plan to return to Longmen City. He had stayed in Longmen City earlier because of the sandalwood box, and now that he had gotten it, he did not want to come back. He had no reason to come to a small place like Longmen City. Chapter 170. Speaking of the sandalwood box, Ce didn't forget the purpose of their trip. He drove the car into a small forest halfway. "What are you doing?" Yun Jian was stunned. At this moment, Ce had already parked the car. He moved his handsome face closer to Yun Jian's, and his warm breath almost sprayed onto her face. The two of them were very close to each other. They were so close that they could kiss if they leaned forward slightly. There was a moment of silence. Just as Yun Jian couldn't stand the atmosphere and wanted to turn the tables around, Ce spoke up. With a flip of his hand, he took out the sandalwood box and passed it to Yun Jian again, saying, "You know this box." Previously, Ce had used the sandalwood box to test Yun Jian. Yun Jian said that she didn't know what the sandalwood box was. Ce was already suspicious of this matter at that time. Now that he took out the sandalwood box again, he didn't use a questioning tone to ask Yun Jian. Instead, he used a firm tone to confirm that she knew what the sandalwood box was. Yun Jian looked directly at Ce. She could clearly see herself reflected in Ce's sharp eyes. In the end, she nodded and closed her eyes. After a while, she opened them again. Her eyes were clear. "Yes, I know this box." Because it was the indirect cause of the death of her biological brother. Yun Jian didn't say the last sentence. "Then do you want to know the secret of this box?" Ce didn't mind that Yun Jian had lied to him earlier. After a pause, he raised his good-looking eyebrows and said in a clear voice, "Or to be more specific, why are the people in the underworld, and even the reclusive old men who occupy the positions of international heroes, not hesitating to come out and fight for it?" Yun Jian naturally wanted to know the answer to this question. She didn't want to play with Ce anymore. She could tell that Ce's measurement skills were unfathomable. She nodded and asked, "Why?" Ce narrowed his eyes and raised his beautiful almond-shaped eyes. His magnetic lips opened and closed. He didn't beat around the bush and directly said, "Because it has the power to bring the dead back to life." Resurrection. Upon hearing these words, Yun Jian's eyelids twitched violently. "You don't believe me?" Ce narrowed his eyes and stared straight at Yun Jian. If she had heard in her previous life that this small sandalwood box had the power to bring the dead back to life, she would not have believed it. But now, she didn't dare to doubt it. She was reborn because of it. How could she not believe it? "Why are you telling me these things?" Yun Jian pursed her lips. Her lip gloss had a natural luster and looked dazzling. "Because." Ce looked at Yun Jian from head to toe and finally smiled. "Because you need to know." What did he mean? Yun Jian frowned when she heard Ce's words. She needed to know? Did Ce already suspect her? Or did he already know that she was reborn? How was that possible? Besides Snake. Lizard, no one else knew about this, and Snake. Lizard would never betray her. You don't have to guess too much. You just have to remember that whatever I do will never harm you. Ce raised his eyebrows and looked straight at Yun Jian as he spoke. Yun Jian pondered for a while and finally nodded unconsciously. She had never thought that she had already become someone's prey in the circle. Ce's fair and slender fingers rubbed against the steering wheel twice. He tilted his head and spoke again. "The sandalwood box has the power to bring the dead back to life and is extremely powerful. However, there is no way to verify whether this is true or not. So it's not just those old fellows who want to get their hands on it. Even the top scholars in the International Medical Academy are searching for its whereabouts and trying to decipher its secrets." He paused and stared at Yun Jian with his beautiful eyes. They were so warm that it seemed as if flames could be lit. "And now, I have the latest news. This sandalwood box was excavated from an ancient tomb in the south. I think there will be new discoveries there. Moreover, many people have already gone there. However, it's strange that the people who entered the ancient tomb were completely cut off from the outside world not long after. None of the people who entered the tomb survived." Chapter 171. Under Yun Jian's gaze, Ce flashed a handsome smile and nodded. "That's right. I came back to Longmen City this time to visit you before heading to the catacomb." Even if none of those who entered the catacomb returned alive, he still had to go due to certain reasons. Even if the price was his life. That was why he came to see her before he left. Yun Jian frowned slightly at his words and kept quiet for 2 seconds before saying, "Come back alive." It was the most touching thing she had ever said. As a secret agent in her past life, she had killed until she was numb. Her only thought was to survive even if she died. To her, there was only one person who could make her say that, be it in her past or present life, and that was Ce. Ce tilted his handsome face as well, the corners of his lips lifting slowly as he replied, "Definitely." Perhaps they had not spent much time together, but some feelings would change unknowingly. Ce drove Yunjian back to the villa and left. Yunjian did not know what kind of mentality she was holding at the moment. She was slowly beginning to realize that her feelings for Ce were different from her feelings for her brother, Yun-yi, and Zhang Xiaofeng. That slightly warm feeling made her palpitate slightly. In the days that followed, Yunjian would go to the military training camp for training during the weekends and attend classes from Monday to Friday as usual. During these few days of classes, Yunjian trained Zhang Xiaofeng daily. However, no matter how hard and tiring it was, he did not complain about it, just as he had said earlier. Ling Yichen, on the other hand, came uninvited when Zhang Xiaofeng was training, running in the morning and going through a series of training sessions with him. This made some girls in school think that the two hunks, Zhang Xiaofeng and Ling Yichen, had gone mad. This was especially true for Ling Yichen, who changed girlfriends as easily as changing clothes. Usually, his greatest interest was to tease beauties. During this period of time, he did not even care about the confessions of some girls. This made many girls in the school secretly sad for quite a while. After school on Friday, Yunjian, Chen Xinyi, Zhang Xiaofeng, and Ling Yichen had just stepped out of the school gates and walked past a sparsely populated area when a figure suddenly appeared and blocked their path. Yunjian, who had always been vigilant, felt that the atmosphere was not right. Just as she was about to make a move, she saw the other party clearly. The other party was a young girl with two neatly combed pigtails and a youthful appearance. Yunjian recognized her at a glance. She was Snake, Lizard's subordinate and also a high-ranking member of the Kosha mercenaries. Her code name was Tanuki. The civet cat looked like a 16 or 17-year-old girl, but she was actually around 25 years old. She just looked young and had a baby face. Beside Yunjian, Zhang Xiaofeng and the other two were shocked when they saw the civet cat suddenly appear. They didn't know what was going on. "She asked you to come?" Yunjian raised her eyebrows. She was naturally the snake lizard. "Yes." The civet cat nodded. As she spoke, she took out a car key from her pocket and handed it to Yunjian. "She asked me to send the car key over," the civet cat explained. Actually, the civet cat was just following orders from her superior, Snake Lizard, who had sent the civet cat over to deliver the car key. The civet cat also didn't know who Yunjian was. For someone like Yunjian, other than her own confidants, no one could get close to her in her previous life. The civet cat was Snake Lizard's subordinate, but she was no exception. Yunjian reached out and caught the car key that the civet cat threw over. She asked, "Where's the car?" She had received a text message from Snake Lizard early in the morning. She would send someone over to deliver her beloved car from her previous life. "It's inside." The civet cat pointed at a dead end. She said, "The car is here. I'm leaving." She turned around and left without any hesitation. Her mission was just to send the car over. After a few exchanges, Zhang Xiaofeng and the other two who were standing at the side were extremely suspicious. They saw that Yunjian had already walked towards the dead end. The three of them hurriedly followed to take a look. However, after turning a corner, a beautiful red sports car stopped at the end of the road. The red high-class sports car was bright and beautiful. Its appearance was exquisite and beautiful, but it was a sharp contrast to the surrounding scenery. Chapter 172. Boys loved sports cars, racing cars, guns, and all sorts of cool things. At the same time, they also loved to study such books. When Ling Yichen's family background allowed him to, he paid special attention to such things as well. Of course, he knew about famous cars. And this new LaFerrari supercar was a famous car that the boys always talked about when they got together. Ling Yichen would never have thought that one of the only 3 sports cars in the world would be in Yunjian's hands. Therefore, the shock he felt just now could not be described with words. Zhang Xiaofeng and Chen Xinyi also looked at Yunjian with surprise in their eyes. On the other end, Yunjian reached out and snapped her fingers. She happily circled around her beloved car. Then, she used the car key to open the door remotely and stood in front of the car. She patted the car hood and turned her head to the side, waving at Ling Yichen and the other two. "How about it? Do you want to come in and sit?" Yes, of course." Before the other two could agree, Ling Chen was the first to run over, looking extremely excited. This Ferrari LaFerrari sports car only had 2 seats, but the back seat could accommodate people. However, if one wanted to sit in the back seat, they would have to climb over from the front seat. Ling Chen and Zhang Xiaofan were gentlemanly and gave the front seat to Chen Xini. After the 3 of them were seated, Yun Jian also got into the driver's seat. At this moment, Zhang Xiaofan suddenly thought of a problem and suddenly asked, "Hey, mister, you know how to drive? You have a driver's license?" Ling Chen and Chen Xini also noticed this and looked at Yun Jian eagerly. However, Yun Jian lifted her chin and raised her eyebrows. "No. But I know how to drive." After that, she locked the door, started the car, and stepped on the accelerator. The car sped off like an arrow. She had not driven her beloved car for a long time. This feeling was as if she had returned to her previous life. Back then, she drove this car and carried out all kinds of tasks. In the car, Ling Chen and the other 2 were so scared that their faces turned purple. Yun Jian stepped on the accelerator and didn't let go of the brake. She sped up, and the surrounding scenery was like a fleeting cloud. It was so fast that she couldn't see anything clearly. There were a few times when she was about to hit something she shouldn't, but in the end, she was able to turn the steering wheel and avoid it. Ling Chen and the other 2 came from well-to-do families, so it was not like they had never taken a car before. But they had never been in such a fast car before. It wasn't until Yun Jian parked the car next to a roadside barbecue stall that the 3 of them got out of the car with their faces flushed red, as if their souls had left their bodies. The first thing Ling Chen said when he got out of the car was, "F***ck, my soul almost jumped out of my body because of you. Yun Jian, are you from a racing background?" Yun Jian just smiled. She spread her hands and said, "To apologize, I'll treat you to barbecue." When they heard that they were going to eat barbecue, the 3 of them became excited again. Their saliva almost flowed out. Once Yun Jian locked the car door, the 4 of them went to the barbecue stall at once. This roadside barbecue stall was the most famous in Longmen City because the food here was cleaner than other places and they were all authentic. Yun Jian and the other 3 had just walked into the tent to pick out some barbecue skewers. A sharp and surprised female voice rang. "Yun Jian? Why are you here?" It seemed like she had not met anyone familiar, but Yun Jian was no stranger to such a malicious voice. She was exasperated that she had to bump into someone she knew just to eat barbecue. Turning around, she saw a girl sitting at a round table with a group of men and women around her. They were obviously here for barbecue as well. In Yun Jian's memory, this girl was none other than the daughter of Qin Yiru's elder brother, Qin Liqian, who had just returned to the Qin family a few days ago. Her name was Qin Fenger. Qin Fenger was also enrolled in a high school in Longmen City. Although it was not as good as First High School, it was already impressive to be able to stand out in Xinjiang town. Chapter 173. In her memory, this Qin Fenger hated the original owner of her body. Sometimes, they would even deliberately find someone to insult the original owner, or in front of the elders, they would pick out the original owner's poor grades and make a big fuss about it. In the end, everyone in town found out that Qin Yiru had given birth to a daughter who was an idiot with the worst grades in school. Qin Fenger looked average and her facial features were average as well. She did not stand out among the crowd. Most importantly, her face was covered in freckles, making her look even uglier. One of the main reasons she hated the original owner of her body was that she was so outstanding, had good grades, was popular, and was well liked by the teachers. Why was Yun Jian, an idiot with terrible academic performance, so pretty? Yet she had to wear such an ugly face. Hence, Qin Fenger was utterly fixated on Yun Jian and bore a grudge against her. Yun Jian was not in a hurry with Qin Fenger. She merely glanced at her, amused. "If you can be here, why can't I?" Yun Jian retorted bluntly. She then turned around and pretended that Qin Fenger and her friends were not there. She pointed at a few skewers and reported to the owner, 50 mutton skewers, 20 sausages, and 10 rice cakes. As she spoke, she turned to ask Zhang Xiaofan and the rest, "Do you guys want anything else?" "Jian Jian, I want 5 more tofu skewers." Chen Xini did not hold back as she told Yun Jian with a wink. "Give me 2 more pairs of grilled wings," Ling Chen said with a grin with a press of his lips. "Same for me and Xini," Zhang Xiaofan replied. Qin Fenger, who was on the other end of the line, was taken aback by Yun Jian's retort. Since when did this little B***tch become so arrogant? How dare she refute her? More importantly, Yun Jian and the three people beside Yun Jian were acting like she did not exist. Qin Fenger had a stomach full of anger. Especially after Yun Jian ignored Qin Fenger, a boy with a face full of red spots and acne sitting next to Qin Fenger mocked her. "Hey, Qin Fenger, look at the little beauty ignoring you." As he spoke, the boy whistled as he sized up Yun Jian. For a moment, everyone who sat with Qin Fenger was focused on Yun Jian. Qin Fenger was most annoyed by this feeling. Her grades were better than Yun Jian's, and she was better than her in everything. Why was she able to attract everyone's attention so easily? Why? Coincidentally, the owner of the restaurant had already prepared the barbecue skewers and seasoned them. He put them all on plates and handed them to Yun Jian and the others. The shop owner smiled foolishly and said, "Young lady, take it. There's a total of 85 yuan here." The prices of goods in 1998 were much lower than now. At that time, 80 RMB was enough for a student to live on for a long time. Yun Jian was treating today. She was very generous and looked like she was going to have a good meal. When Qin Fenger heard this, she was secretly shocked. Qin Yiru's monthly salary was only a few hundred yuan. Yun Jian was treating people to a meal here and it was close to 100 yuan. Where did she get the money? Hence, Qin Fenger used this as an excuse to pick on Yun Jian again. She saw Yun Jian take out 100 yuan from her pocket and her eyes turned red. She pointed at Yun Jian and shouted, "Yun Jian, where did you get so much money? Don't think I don't know that your mother only earns a few hundred yuan a month working for others. She even has to pay for your family's expenses." Then, Qin Fenger sized up Zhang Xiaofan, Ling Chen, and Chen Xinyi who were sitting beside Yun Jian. She saw that the three of them were wearing branded coats. They were the symbol of wealth from head to toe. Qin Fenger could not help but point at Yun Jian. She twitched her mouth and slandered her. "Yun Jian, don't tell me you're their sugar baby?" As soon as she said that, the people sitting beside Qin Fenger were obviously stunned. They looked at Yun Jian with disdain. Chapter 174. Qin Fenger seemed to enjoy the feeling of Yun Jian being looked down upon by others. This feeling allowed her to regain her confidence in the crowd. After she said that, she added fuel to the fire. "Yun Jian, even if you lack money, you can't do this kind of thing. How can you face your mother by doing this?" Qin Fenger's words gave the surrounding people the illusion that Yun Jian was really being kept by someone. Something that didn't even exist was said to be true by her. Zhang Xiaofan took a bite of the tofu skewer, but when he heard Qin Fenger's words, he spat out the tofu crumbs in his mouth. Yun Jian, who could afford to drive a restricted sports car in the world, would need them to keep her. Wasn't this as unbelievable as a pig flying in the sky? How could she, Yun Jian, be a poor person? After Yun Jian heard Qin Fenger's words, she narrowed her eyes and swallowed the mutton skewer naturally. She tilted her head and looked at Qin Fenger. Then, she indifferently let out a creepy chuckle. What I said was the truth." Qin Fenger felt that the atmosphere wasn't right, but she still insisted on her own opinion. At the same time, she looked at Zhang Xiaofan and reminded him, kindly, "Don't worry. Let me tell you, Yun Jian's family is very poor. Her father is a gambler and owes a lot of debt. I'm also kindly reminding you that a person like her must have slept with many men. For a person like her, there's nothing she wouldn't do for money. You still want this kind of broken shoe." Whoosh! Just as Qin Fenger was getting more and more worked up, trying to persuade Zhang Xiaofan to stay away from Yun Jian with her usual confidence of picking on other people's weaknesses, Zhang Xiaofan suddenly stopped. A slender bamboo skewer for barbecuing was stuck on the round table in front of Qin Fenger with a whoosh sound. Being able to penetrate deep into the wood by 3 fissures was just that. When everyone turned their heads to look again, they saw that the bamboo skewer in Yun Jian's hand had disappeared without a trace. Qin Fenger's eyes widened as she watched the scene unfold. She swallowed hard and took a deep breath. Yun Jian was actually able to insert such a slender bamboo stick into the round wooden table from such a distance. Everyone was in a state of panic. Even though Zhang Xiaofan and the other two were used to Yun Jian's skills, they couldn't help but cheer for her. While everyone was still in a daze, Yun Jian had already appeared in front of Qin Fenger like a ghost. Her faint words seemed to have come from hell, making everyone's hair stand on end. I'm a mistress? Just as everyone heaved a sigh of relief, Yun Jian's relaxed voice rang out once again. She stretched out her fair and delicate hand and took the bamboo stick from the round table. While Qin Fenger was still in a daze, the bamboo stick slid across Qin Fenger's freckled cheek. Yun Jian's action made Qin Fenger unable to react in time. She shivered reflexively. Then Yun Jian's indifferent but terrifying voice lingered in Qin Fenger's ears like a nightmare. Which eye of yours saw that I'm a mistress? I don't mind poking that eyeball for you, or even blinding both your eyes. Just like this. As she spoke, the bamboo stick in her hand slid past Qin Fenger's eyes again. Qin Fenger was suddenly reminded of how Yun Jian had stabbed the bamboo skewer into the round table with a fling of her hand just now. She remembered the coldness of Yun Jian's bamboo stick when it slid across her cheeks. She shrieked, the image of Yun Jian stabbing her eyeball with the bamboo skewer flashing in her mind from being intimidated. Qin Fenger ran away like a madwoman, leaving her group of companions looking at each other in dismay. Hypnotism. She just used hypnotism on Qin Fenger. At this time, a boy sitting far away suddenly pointed at Yun Jian and shouted. He looked agitated. Yun Jian suddenly frowned. Chapter 175. Yes, Yun Jian knew hypnotism, and the hypnotism that she had mastered was definitely not as simple as it seemed. She was a secret agent in her past life, the top secret agent in the secret agent world, slaying God. However, she was very young in her past life. She was only 16 years old, but she had already ascended to the throne that some people might not even be able to touch in their entire lives. It was not without reason. She was not a genius that only appeared once in a million years. She was very ordinary. Just one of the billions of lives on Earth. However, her experience was different. She had accidentally saved an old man during a mission. The old man's whereabouts were uncertain and he came and went without a trace. However, it was this old man who taught her many things that ordinary people could not come into contact with. For example, hypnotism was one of them. Other than that, she was involved in many things that others could not even imagine. Yun Jian's hypnotism in her past life was to the extent that she could let the other party feel comfortable and enjoy dying after being stabbed to death. She had only done something to Qin Fenger earlier, causing her to have hypnotic hallucinations and run away after seeing some horrifying scenes. This level of hypnotism was very simple. Strictly speaking, the old man was Yun Jian's master. Although it was not officially acknowledged, he had already taught Yun Jian his lifelong knowledge, allowing her to have a meteoric rise in the secret agent world. This secret art had also become Yun Jian's trump card, a trump card that she had never told anyone. Yun Jian had no idea where the old man had gone. He had always disappeared without a trace and lived a carefree life. Perhaps he had already retired to somewhere. Yun Jian wanted to see him again, but she did not know if she would have the chance. Today, Yun Jian had used Qin Fenger to practice. She had performed a simple hypnotism on her and made her see some horrifying scenes. However, she did not expect that her hypnotism would be seen through. Yun Jian turned her head sideways and glanced at the boy who had just spoken. She saw that the boy had a delicate and pretty face, looking innocent and childish at the same time. When he saw Yun Jian looking at him, he recalled how he had been shouting and wrangling just now. His cheeks inexplicably blushed, and he actually became as shy as a little girl. Yun Jian raised her eyebrows and looked at him angrily. What did you say? Her tone was so flat that no one could tell what Yun Jian was thinking at the moment. The boy trembled for a while. He looked up in fear and finally said in a panic, "I." At the same time, Yun Jian walked towards the boy. She stood not far from the boy, frowned, and asked a question that had nothing to do with this matter. What's your name? The boy shyly lowered his head, and his voice was as low as a mosquito's buzz. My name is Lu Haoze. Lu Haoze. Yun Jian smiled, the corners of her lips curling into an unreadable smile. Then she said softly, I'll remember you. In today's world, there were not many people who knew how to hypnotize. Especially this boy who could tell at a glance that she had used hypnotism. It did not matter if he was involved in this aspect, or if it was his family's inheritance, or if he was born with this kind of ability. She, Yun Jian, had to get to the bottom of this. Because ever since Yun Jian debuted, She had never met anyone who knew how to hypnotize other than the old man. And obviously, it was not convenient for her to ask Lu Haozi these questions in public. Chapter 176. Lu Haozi's cheeks flushed even redder at Yun Jian's words. Coupled with his tender skin, it looked like water could be squeezed out of his cheeks. He looked like an adorable little brother, giving Yun Jian the feeling of meeting her younger brother in her past life. Although she had only met her biological younger brother once, she could still remember his adorable and shy look. While Yun Jian was conversing with Lu Haozi, Zhang Xiaofan, Chen Xinyi, and Ling Yichen had almost emptied their plates of barbecued meat. In the end, it was Chen Xinyi who snatched 10 mutton skewers from Zhang Xiaofan and Ling Yichen for Yun Jian. It was undeniable that Zhang Xiaofan, Chen Xinyi, and Ling Yichen's eating speed was top-notch. It only took them a few minutes to finish the dozens of skewers. If there was a foodie competition in Longmen City, the three of them would definitely win the grand prize. Let's go! Yun Jian took a mutton skewer from Chen Xinyi and finished it. She let the three of them share the remaining 9 skewers equally and led them out of the barbecue shop. Since the sun was shining directly on the ground, those in the chilly autumn breeze could bask in its rays. The owner pulled the curtain of the tent aside. Yun Jian and her friends walked out of the barbecue shop and headed for the LaFerrari sports car that they could see. Even after the 4 of them got into the car and Yun Jian started the engine and sped away, Qin Fenger's friends were still gawking at them in the barbecue shop. It was until someone exclaimed, That's the latest edition of the LaFerrari supercar. It's a limited edition of only 3 in the world." As a result, the crowd was alarmed. Qin Fenger's false accusation that Yun Jian was a mistress was unraveled. The driver was Yun Jian and the car was obviously Yun Jian's. The boys really loved famous cars, and all of them looked at it with envy and admiration. Lu Haozi, who was sitting in the corner, also raised his head and looked at Yun Jian's car leaving. That cool look reminded him of Yun Jian's words, and his pink cheeks instantly flushed red. For the next few days, Yun Jian returned to her routine. She wandered back and forth between school, home, and the military training camp. 15 days later, Gu Junjian inspected the results of everyone's training. Yun Jian passed quickly. The result of this inspection was based on the results of the 5 kilograms 5 kilometers cross-country run. Naturally, Yun Jian easily passed. The other 6 also met the standard. 5 days later, the bi-monthly competition came as scheduled. On this day, Gu Junjian stood with his hands clasped behind his back, looking at the 7 of them. He frowned and then relaxed. He finally opened his mouth and said, "This month's assessment competition is cancelled." So awesome. We don't have to take the assessment this month? Chu Xiongnan winked at Chu Ning and smiled happily. It was obvious that if they did not pass the bi-monthly competition, they would be kicked out of the team. Chu Xiongnan was also the weakest in the group. He had to admit that he barely passed every assessment. How could he not be happy when he heard that the assessment competition was cancelled? Don't celebrate too early. Your assessment is cancelled because the team has received a new mission this time. Gu Yunjian's tone was heavy. He continued, "This mission is very important. It's supposed to be carried out by official Advanced Special Forces soldiers and not you Special Forces candidates. However, it's also a very secretive mission. We can't let the enemy suspect anything during the mission. The members of the Advanced Special Forces are all familiar faces. They're definitely not suitable for this mission. However, you guys are new faces and have never been on a mission before. It's the best decision to let you guys do this. Therefore, I plan to let you guys do your debut mission." As he said this, Gu Junjian became even more serious. "This mission is risky. You guys can choose not to do it." As he said this, Gu Junjian looked at Yun Jian. In fact, other than Yun Jian, the other 6 had been training in the military for more than a year. However, Gu Junjian was not worried about Yun Jian, who had just joined the team. He even put his hopes on Yun Jian. If Yun Jian was willing to take part in this mission, it was guaranteed that it would be completed successfully. Chapter 177. Yun Jian naturally sensed Gu Yunjian's gaze on her and understood the meaning behind his gaze. "I'll go," Yun Jian said in the next second, but it reignited Gu Yunjian's hope. He suddenly smiled. I'll go too. If a girl like Yun Jian has the courage to go, wouldn't it be embarrassing if I don't go? Although Chu Xiongnan was the weakest in the group, he did not back down when it came to serious matters. He was the second to speak up without hesitation. The others also expressed their readiness to accept the mission. What was there to be afraid of? Since they had already entered this place and stayed, they had no intention of running away at the last minute. In fact, this group of young people who were candidates for the special forces did not only consist of these few people. Later on, many of them left because they could not stand the intensity of the training. Some of them did not pass the assessment and did not have the ability to stay. Hence, after a while, only Chu Ning's group of 6 could endure the hardship and stay. Naturally, their perseverance was incomparable to that of ordinary people. Including Yun Jian, who joined later, there were now a total of 7 of them. Good. Gu Junjian glanced at the group again and immediately showed a hint of admiration in his eyes. Regardless of whether the mission was a success or failure, at least none of them backed down. This bit of spirit was difficult to achieve even for ordinary people who seemed very strong and powerful. The mission will be carried out in a month's time. In other words, you still have a month's worth of training. During this month, I will train you with the intensity of an official special forces soldier. Please be prepared. Gu Junjian said sternly. In fact, the mission this time was not urgent. It was a secret mission, and the mission had to be carried out step by step. Gu Junjian set the mission to start in a month. After all, Chu Ning and the others had not experienced actual combat. What he needed to do was to strengthen everyone's physical fitness and strength in a short period of time. Going on a mission was not child's play. If they were not careful, they could be seriously injured or even lose their lives. Hence, they could not afford to be careless. Yes. The 7 of them replied in unison. Remember, during the mission, you are not allowed to use your real names. This is also to prevent unnecessary consequences if the mission fails. So, in the next 15 minutes, each of you will choose a code name for yourself. Remember, this code name will follow you all the way to the end as special forces. So, I'll give you 15 minutes to discuss. After 15 minutes, report your code names. Gu Junjian finished speaking in one breath. He glanced at the watch in his hand and noted down the time. Wow, a replacement account. Chu Ning was overjoyed when she heard that. She turned around and asked the others, "What kind of code names are you guys going to use?" Of course it has to be super domineering. Chu Xiongnan rolled his eyes at Chu Ning. However, no one reported their code names first. 15 minutes later, Gu Junjian glanced at his watch and said, "Time's up. Now, report your code names from left to right." From left to right, that was to say, from the boys. The order of the people standing from left to right was Hong Fan, Feng Xiaoran, Lu Shiyun, Chu Xiongnan, Jiang Weiwei, Chu Ning, and Yun Jian. After Gu Junjian finished speaking, everyone reported their code names according to the order they came up with. Hong Fan said, "Dark Night." Feng Xiaoran said, "Red Flame." Lu Shiyun said, "Nirvana." Chu Xiongnan said, "Thunder." Jiang Weiwei said, "Haitang." When it was Chu Ning's turn, she could not help but burst out laughing when she heard Chu Xiongnan code name. Chu Xiongnan was an idiot. How could he have the cheek to use such a domineering code name? This code name did not match his strength at all. However, Chu Ning immediately straightened her face and said the code name she had thought of. Momo. After saying that, Chu Ning turned to look at Yun Jian excitedly. Yun Jian, it's your turn. The group of people wanted to know what code name Yun Jian would use. Even Gu Junjian turned to look at Yun Jian. Yun Jian's lips twitched as she uttered faintly, "Killing God." When he first heard these 2 words, Gu Yunjian's entire body trembled. Chapter 178. Lu Shiyun was also the son of a military family. Since young, he had been able to keep a cool head. He was the oldest among the group. He was already 20 years old and was currently in university. It was because of Lu Shiyun's cool head that Gu Junjian made him the leader of the 7-man team. Even someone like Lu Shiyun, who had never been flustered, was shocked when he heard Yun Jian's code name. One could only imagine how the others would react. In reality, the few of them knew about the people on the assassin and secret agent leaderboard. They were not ordinary students but candidates for the special forces. They had to know about these people on the secret agent and assassin leaderboard. They even planned to stay as far away from these people as possible even after they officially became special forces. Just when everyone's attention was on Yun Jian explained, "I'm talking about slashing God. Slashing means killing." With this explanation, everyone's tensed hearts finally calmed down. However, Yun Jian was so young. If she was really slaying God, who was on the secret agent leaderboard, how could she be here? Gu Junjian frowned before relaxing his brows. He took a few more glances at Yun Jian before looking away solemnly. Slaying God and slaying God. Their code names were so similar and they sounded the same. Moreover, Yun Jian had killed Wolf Blade, who was ranked 10th on the assassin leaderboard. Was it really a coincidence that Yun Jian came up with this code name? Ah, it's just a code name. It's just a coincidence. All right, it's decided on the code names. Chu Xiongnan had no idea how shocked Gu Junjian and the rest were earlier. Instead, he stepped forward to adjust the atmosphere like a peacemaker. Cough, cough. All right, since you've decided on your code names, let's start the training. Gu Junjian, who had been silent all this while, interrupted them. It was actually very strenuous to increase their training intensity to that of a normal special forces training. However, there was no time to do that now. First of all, in the 5,000-meter cross-country run every day, everyone changed from carrying 5 kilograms to fully armed with more than 20 kilograms. In other words, he had to carry something that weighed more than 20 kilograms while running. This training was just a basic training for an ordinary special forces soldier. After all, as an official special forces soldier, he would carry firearms and equipment on his back when he went out on a mission, which was this full set of equipment. Adding up all the things that should be brought along, the total weight was only about 20 kilograms. At the end of the day, other than Yun Jian, the rest of them were already aching all over. They couldn't even stand up straight. A few days later, Yun Jian asked for a week's leave from Gu Junjian. As a top student of the school, she was sent abroad for a week's study. Gu Junjian was not worried about Yun Jian's skills, so he agreed to Yun Jian's request for a week's leave. On this morning, the sun had just risen and a cool breeze blew past. Yun Jian only carried an old school bag that Qin Yiru had helped her tidy up. She stood at the entrance of Songshan's first high school with Chen Sini. This time, Longmen First High School only had 5 spots for the study. Other than Yun Jian and Chen Sini, the other 3 were already there. Songshan's First High School was the organizer this time. Yun Jian and the rest boarded the plane with Songshan's First High School. After waiting for a while at the entrance of Songshan's First High School, Yun Jian saw a familiar tall and handsome figure walk out of the school. Chapter 179. Yun Yi had long known that his younger sister would be representing the school to participate in this overseas study activity. But he could not help looking forward to it when he thought that he could go overseas with his sister today. Striding with his long legs and a sweet smile on his handsome face, Yun Yi walked toward Yun Jian. "Xiao Jian, you're here?" "Amen." Yun Jian nodded and pointed at Chen Sini beside her, introducing her. "Gu, this is my friend, Chen Sini." This was the first time Yun Jian had introduced her as a friend in front of others, so Chen Sini could not help feeling a little excited. In fact, Yun Jian had already treated Chen Sini as a friend after spending so much time together. It was just that this was his first time saying it out loud. "Hi, I'm Chen Sini. You must be Jian's brother? Nice to meet you." Chen Sini introduced herself to Yun Yi with a chuckle looking at his handsome face. Nice to meet you." Yun Yi nodded, his short handsome hair bobbing. "Students, are you all ready? Come and gather on the bus, we're leaving." The tutor standing at the entrance of DE Senior High School waved and called out in a sweet voice. The tutor who was leading the students overseas this time had the surname Ding. She was a female tutor who looked as sweet as her voice. She did not look old, between 20 to 25 years old. There were 2 tutors leading the team. The other tutor had the surname Kong, so she would call him Tutor Kong for the time being. "Let's go over too," Yun Yi said to Yun Jian and Chen Sini with a flick of her short hair as she glanced in that direction. "Amen." Yun Jian and Chen Sini nodded in unison. Su Haokol did not come this time. Those who came were the top students in their respective schools with excellent English proficiency. Even those who were good in their studies but lacking in English did not get a turn, so it was not hard to imagine that Su Haokol did not get a turn. Since Su Haokol was not with Yun Yi, he was the happiest that his younger sister could come. The group boarded the bus quickly, and after a few hours of bumpy ride, they arrived at the provincial airport and boarded the flight to Country Y. The overseas study destination was an advanced school in Country Y. It was called Yana High School. Yana High School was a continuous secondary and senior high school. Its educational standard was one of the best in the world. The name of Yana High School was derived from the name of its first headmistress. Since its establishment, Yana High School had a history of several hundred years. Its regional culture was also very profound. At the entrance of Yana High School entrance. Wow, Jian, this is the famous Yana High School. It's a century-old school that lives up to its name. Look, just the entrance alone is already something our school can't compare to. Chen Sini was the first to get off the bus, holding Yun Jian's hand in excitement. 80% of those who graduated from Yana High School and passed the Gaokao from the world's renowned universities had a graduation rate, making Yana High School one of the best in the world. After Tutor Ding and Tutor Kong communicated with Yana High School's foreign tutor, they interrupted the students' excited shouts. Chapter 180. Teacher Madge was a native of Country Y. She had fair skin and big blue eyes that seemed to be able to see through everything. When Teacher Madge heard this, she introduced herself to the students in broken Chinese. Hello everyone. My name is Maki. You can call me by my Chinese name or call me Teacher Maki. As she spoke, Teacher Maki revealed a row of neat and clean white teeth and made a face at the same time. Many students were amused by Ms. Maki's sudden grimace, and they had a good impression of this foreign teacher. Alright, there's an old saying in Country Z that it's better to keep a long story short. Today, we'll keep it short. Later, follow me around the school and then I'll bring you to your assigned dormitories. Today, I'll let you familiarize yourself with the school. Then, Teacher Maki snapped her fingers and said cheerfully and freely, Now everyone, follow me. Let's take a look around the school. Teacher Maki's humorous and witty tone didn't sound like authentic Chinese, but it was her nonsensical voice that made the students burst into laughter. Yun Jian didn't laugh, but Chen Sini, who was standing beside Yun Jian, couldn't stop smiling. Teacher Maki quickly led the group into the school. It had to be said that Yana High School was worthy of being called a century-old school. Its architectural style and size were incomparable to ordinary high schools. However, in Yun Jian's eyes, these high-end and classy buildings were just the most ordinary kind. However, it was the first time that Yun Yi and Chen Sini, who were walking beside Yun Jian, saw such a magnificent building. They couldn't help but take a few more glances along the way. After walking around half of the school, about 2 to 3 hours had passed. Along the way, the students would stop and look because they saw something novel. However, even after walking around half of the school, the students didn't have the strength to continue walking. Yana High School was just too big. Therefore, Teacher Maki led the group to the dormitories that were arranged for the students to rest. The dormitories here were 4 people to a room. Yun Jian and Chen Sini were in the same room. As for the other 2 girls in the same room, they were both straight-A students in the first senior high school. Chen Sini and Yun Jian entered the dormitory first, carrying their own backpacks. Chen Sini found a good bed out of habit. She took off her backpack and was about to put it on the bed. One of the other 2 girls ran over and pushed Chen Sini away. She placed her belongings on top of the bed and declared loudly, I've taken a liking to this bed. You can find another one. Her voice was full of righteousness, as if she was the one who had been robbed and was now asking for it back. Chen Sini almost fell to the ground. Luckily, Yun Jian, who was next to her, supported her and prevented her from falling. No matter how good-tempered a person was, they would not be able to accept being pushed for no reason, let alone Chen Sini. After Chen Sini stood up, she turned her head and shouted angrily at the girl who had just pushed her, Why did you push me? Chen Sini's tone carried a hint of anger. Unexpectedly, the girl rolled her eyes at Chen Sini. She flipped her hair and showed a disgusted expression at Chen Sini on her horrifying face with white powder makeup. On the contrary, the girl confidently complained to Chen Sini, It's your fault for taking the bed that I wanted. The reason she had pushed her was very simple. It was because Chen Sini had taken a liking to the bed that she wanted. Chapter 181. This is the bed you wanted? This isn't your house. Besides, I didn't know you wanted this bed. Are you crazy? Chen Sini was not a good-tempered person. Naturally, she was more aggrieved than anyone else when she was pushed for no reason. She took it upon herself to shout back at the girl. This girl's name was Lu Xiaoxiao. She looked quite pure, but unfortunately, the colorful makeup on her face covered up her purity, making her look a little strange. Lu Xiaoxiao had a philosophy since she was young. If she wanted something, she wouldn't allow others to take it away. Chen Sini's actions seemed to have disobeyed her. She was about to hit her and scolded her. You're the crazy one. Your whole family is crazy. I want this bed, so it's mine. I don't need any reason. You. Lu Xiaoxiao wanted to hit Chen Sini, but she was stopped by the other girl who ran in. The girl stopped in front of Lu Xiaoxiao and Chen Sini. She said to Lu Xiaoxiao, Xiaoxiao, don't be like this. They were the ones who chose these beds first. We came in late anyway. The girl turned around and smiled awkwardly at Chen Sini and Yun Jian. I'm sorry. Xiaoxiao has always been like this. Please don't hold it against her. Seeing how sincere the girl was, Chen Sini did not intend to continue the conversation. She turned to pick the other two beds with Yun Jian and tidied up her belongings. TSK. Who do you think you are? Lu Xiaoxiao was stopped by the girl, but she glared at Chen Sini and Yun Jian. She remembered it. Lu Xiaoxiao was a top student in No. 1 high school. However, the most annoying thing about her was that she considered herself to be the most outstanding student in the first year of high school, so she was indifferent to others. She even felt that others should be her slaves and deserved to be her stepping stones. The girl who came to mediate was called Tong Yulan. Tong Yulan's grades were excellent. She wasn't an ordinary person since she could enter No. 1 high school. However, she was only above average in No. 1 high school, which was full of top students. Her only outstanding subject was English. She and Lu Xiaoxiao were classmates, but they weren't friends. However, Lu Xiaoxiao was willing to do her a favor. If it weren't for the two of them going abroad, Tong Yulan wouldn't want to be with someone like Lu Xiaoxiao. This annoying quarrel didn't end. Lu Xiaoxiao's favorite thing to do was to take advantage of others. Since she had her eyes on Yun Jian and Chen Sini, there would be consequences. At this moment, Lu Xiaoxiao didn't know what it meant to not die if one didn't seek death. Of course, this was a story for later. After Chen Sini and Yun Jian tidied up the room, they went downstairs to gather. Teacher Maki was waiting for them downstairs. When Yun Jian and the rest went downstairs, they saw Yun Yi and some other students from Country Z waiting for them. However, there were 5 or 6 foreign students standing in the middle. They were about the same age as the rest. The atmosphere wasn't very harmonious. At this moment, the fair-skinned foreign student standing in the middle mocked them in glib English. You little brats from Country Z look so skinny and weak. You're just like a wooden stick. As he spoke, the foreign student gestured with his firm muscles and mocked. This is the spirit a real man should have. Chapter 182. The foreign male student's name was Charlie Lawson. Lawson was a very naughty boy who loved to tease his teacher. Now that he saw Yun Yi and the others, he was even more interested in teasing and ridiculing them without holding back. The foreign male student standing next to Lawson, who was led by Lawson, heard him and laughed mockingly. Their actions made Teacher Maki feel even more awkward and helpless. Your muscles are really big and you look very manly. Just as Yun Yi and the others were clenching their fists and gnashing their teeth at Lawson, Yun Jian's beautiful voice was heard. She spoke in perfect English, which stunned everyone present. Everyone was shocked by Yun Jian's perfect English and they were all dumbfounded. The students from Country Z were even more enraged. Yun Jian actually praised Lawson? Lawson's words were not just directed at them. What he meant was that he was scolding all the people from Country Z. Yun Jian was actually helping outsiders? Yun Yi was also stunned, but he knew that his sister would not slander her own people. When Lawson heard Yun Jian's praise, he laughed out loud and almost lamented that his charm could make the other party's woman fall for him. Yun Jian's leisurely words were heard again. It's a pity that although your muscles are big, They're flashy without substance. You only look strong on the outside, but you don't have real strength. You're just a joke. Yun Jian's words were very calm, but there was an element of surprise in the calmness. The students from Country Z were in awe of Yun Jian at once. While praising the other party, she also gave him a critical blow. Yun Jian's way of doing things was so satisfying. What? At the same time, Lawson's expression changed drastically. He was so angry that his face instantly turned pale. Lawson was infuriated that a little girl had slandered him as someone who was flashy but had no substance and was all talk and no substance. Didn't you hear me clearly? Yun Jian blinked her beautiful eyes and continued, I was just joking with you. It was meant to be a taunt, but coming from Yun Jian's mouth, it sounded like she was speaking innocently and innocently. Even so, Lawson was so angry that his face turned green. Good job. Lawson gritted his teeth and glared at Yun Jian. He then said in an extremely provocative tone, since you said that I'm flashy and that my muscles are just for show, then if you have the guts, let one of you fight me. When Lawson mentioned a match, he actually meant a fight. The teachers in Country Y didn't object to students fighting, so Ms. Maki didn't stop them. No problem, Yun Jian replied with her arms crossed. Her frivolous gaze made Lawson even angrier. Come on. Yun Jian hooked her pinky finger at Lawson. Yun Jian meant that she was going to fight Lawson? A group of students from Z Country who were also here to further their studies widened their eyes in disbelief. Although Yun Jian's actions were satisfying, what about her? How was she going to fight Lawson? Putting aside the fact that girls were not as strong as boys, Lawson was at least 1.9 meters tall. Compared to Yun Jian, the difference was huge. In addition, Lawson had a big and muscular body. Yun Jian would probably be sent flying with one punch. Lawson was stunned. After he recovered, his disdain returned to his eyes and he chuckled. You can't, I'm a man. I don't fight with women. We'll only know if I can win after we fight. Yun Jian suddenly narrowed her eyes. After she finished speaking, she ran towards Lawson like a flash of lightning. In the next second, she was next to Lawson. With a flip of her hand, she grabbed Lawson's arm and kicked him horizontally. At the same time, her small arm circled around Lawson's back. Then, Yun Jian lifted Lawson up and with a somersault, she threw Lawson to the ground. One move. Lawson didn't even recover from his shock. When Lawson landed on the ground with a loud thud, everyone came back to their senses. At this time, Lawson had been thrown to the ground by Yun Jian. The scene was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.